as amended. Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I was a co-author on Senator Coleman's bill too. Then it's been sitting past this committee last year. And it's been sitting in finance ever since. And if that was the springboard for the changes you made, I certainly hadn't heard of any of them during the last year. So it is a little disappointing
as usual,
because there's a lot of new things in this bill
going on for a little
and
while.
so it's hard to kind of go through it and
matter of fact,
inform opinions on the spot.
Stream earlier.
The this A1 amendment, but
flip through some stuff and find out.
Take a look at this and
then kind of debated on it.
Analyze it over time. But it is disappointing. It does seem like there was not bipartisanship on this with the bill pending that we had, Senator Coleman and I, over the last year. If this was something that you wanted to do, you could have reached out to us sometime in the last year, and I'm sure we would have been happy to work with you. But having said that, we'll move forward and see what we can come up with. Thanks.
Sorry, Senator Pappas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think it's not that uncommon, depending on who's controlling the body, for the authors to switch. I remember a collaboration between Senator Eden and Senator Rosen, and when the Republicans were in control of the Senate, and Senator Rosen authored the, what was it, the drug bill? I'm sorry, forgot the name of the drug, Oxycontin bill. And when the Democrats had control, Senator Eaton authored it, and they really worked as a team. So I'm sorry that didn't work out this year, but it's really not uncommon for that to happen.
So it's also not that uncommon for DFL bills to have been cloned by GOP members when they became the minority without any contact from with the previous DFL chief author.
I can think of that drug.
So a little hard to see it worth getting our noses all out of joint over that. But that said, we ought to be able to find common ground. And Senator Kroon, if you need another minute to read the 3-page to read everything amendment plus the A2, we're happy to give you 3 minutes to do that right now. Otherwise, there'll be ample opportunity to follow up with Senator Gustafson, who has shown a very strong willingness to work with.
They're pushing the safe storage laws. I don't know what else they'll get to today. They have a long list of bills.
So is there any further discussion on Senate File 5153?
Mr. Chair, if I could just add, I have invited GOP members to work with me on this. I still invite GOP members to work with me on this. It is something I have brought up to members even before this was dropped. I hope that we can go forward in a bipartisan manner, which was always my intention, including with Senator Coleman, who I immediately offered second author to. So hopefully we will be able to move forward in that regard.
Standards for safe storage of firearms, criminal penalties. Penalties increase
Senator
firearms persons ineligible.
Westland, you wish to make the motion?
Penalties for transferring certain firearms.
Senator Westland moves that Senate File 5153 as amended be recommended to pass and be re-referred to the Senate Committee on Finance. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? The motion prevails. All right, members, we are on to Senate File 606. Lost or stolen firearms, Senator Westland.
And we'll back it up and listen to their shit about safe storage too. They hit some of these other bills that don't necessarily.
The packet is being distributed, members. This is the first committee that it is appearing in.
Oh, look, lost or stolen firearms.
There is a fiscal note
where we heard
accompanying the bill with your packet, and there's correspondence
What's up,
from
Brother Bob? You back
interested
for some more?
Stakeholders and individuals as well for you
Damn,
to
I thought you
review.
guys would have had enough after the earlier stream today. Dude, I couldn't believe it. We had like 50 people, according to StreamYard, 54 watching earlier today. It was awesome.
Senator Westland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members. I hope you enjoyed your cheesecake. So this bill is regarding lost and stolen firearms. It's very short. It is a very simple bill. It does create a duty to report a lost or stolen firearm within 48 hours of the time when the person knew of the loss or the theft or reasonably should have known. It is a minimal penalty. It is a petty misdemeanor. And the bill also provides immunity that if a person does report a lost or stolen firearm in compliance with the requirements of the subdivision 1, that they would be immune from criminal prosecution for an offense pursuant to state law related to storage of firearms. I believe there is an amendment only to change the effective date, Mr. Chair, that the effective date will be changed to August 1st, 2024.
Senator Westland moves that line 1.21, 2023 be deleted, replaced with 2024. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Senator Westland.
That is the basis of
This
the
is very true.
bill. I stand for any questions.
All right.
I don't believe.
Is there anyone in the room that wishes to testify in connection with this bill? I have Brian Gosh is signed up ahead of time, and Rob Vanasek, who I believe is not with us this afternoon. Mr. Gosh, if you have something to add on this bill specifically, come on forward and please see if you can keep it down to 2 minutes or less.
One or two other people testified against these other bills so far, but
thank you again,
What's
Mr. Chair.
mom's
Member of the
man
Senate
said?
Judiciary Committee, Brian Gosh, National Rifle Association, opposing Senate File 606. I believe it's a laudable goal that this bill has, but as a 2018 survey of firearms studies conducted by the RAND Corporation found that there was no demonstration of the producible outcomes of what this goal would be with this bill. Specifically, the think tank noted that we found no qualifying studies showing that the lost or stolen firearm reporting requirement decreased any of the outcomes they investigated, which included officer-involved shootings, mass shootings, suicide, unintentional injuries and deaths, and violent crime. When somebody has their firearm stolen, their primary goal is to figure out who broke in, how they broke
you may
in,
not even
keep
know
their family safe.
it was stolen.
They deal with law enforcement, they deal with the insurance company. Their thoughts aren't on reporting it within 48 hours necessarily. And they may not discover that it was stolen until sometime thereafter. And even when they do, why call law enforcement twice? You need to get the serial number if you don't already have it written down. That might require a few days talking to the department store. And so you notify law enforcement once you get that information. And so finally, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, if you pass a law like this, you're going to potentially violate
after the
a
fact.
defendant's Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate him or herself. In that, I mean, you have prohibited persons at times. Those could be people who are dishonorably discharged from the military. They can maybe committed a felony, and they have possession of a firearm. If you force them under this law to report that they are in possession of a lost or stolen firearm, that they had a firearm stolen from them that they were in possession of, you are incriminating them. They are incriminating themselves by that report. Under Hayes versus the United States, this is a U.S. Supreme Court case, determined that because an individual has a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination, a prohibited person could not be compelled to register a firearm. Therefore, prohibited people could not be compelled to comply with any lost or stolen reporting requirement, as that would be an admission of that person illegally owned that firearm. So for those reasons and others, we would oppose this bill. Thank you.
Mr. Gosh, could you clarify for me the last couple of lines that you read? Where did the quote from the case end and your commentary begin at the end there?
With the registration of a firearm.
Yeah. So the quote from the case said they could not be compelled to register the firearm?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Okay. And then after that, you drew the conclusion from that they could not also be required then to report a lost or stolen.
Yes, which I believe that principle would apply.
Freaking junk ass calls right now.
Okay. But the holding
Really
doesn't directly.
It's unknown numbers, probably ATF.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
The holding itself doesn't say anything about reporting lost or stolen firearms, correct?
That's correct. That particular case dealt with the registration of a firearm.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify because you just went straight through without identifying the
I'm
closed
trying to stay
quote.
under 2 minutes. I'm sorry.
All right. Well,
This dude
okay.
right here, man, I've seen him in a lot of these hearings, the dude with the glasses, and he's an absolute leftist tyrant. So, Michigan
All right. Thank
or
you.
Minnesota, I'm sorry. This is Minnesota.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Westland.
I would note that there are a number of states that have passed mandatory loss and theft reporting laws, including Colorado. Let's see here. Ohio, Rhode Island, Oregon, Virginia, New York, New Jersey,
None of them are
Michigan,
constitutional.
Massachusetts, Maryland, et cetera.
So
So
hasn't stopped shit.
this is a provision that has been adopted by any number of states. And it's somewhat disappointing to me that there are literally no gun violence prevention measures that are acceptable to certain organizations. None.
No, there are no
Thought straw purchases. We heard about that.
With half a fucking brain.
Not a simple provision saying that if your gun is lost or stolen, you should report it. I believe the last testifier said that the person would already be dealing with police, which leads me to believe they would already be reporting that. So the logic on this is a little lost on me, Mr. Chair.
NPC law.
This bill actually also creates an immunity clause that someone could not be charged under the safe storage law if their firearm is lost or stolen. We do know that lost and stolen firearms are firearms that often end up being used in criminal activity, and the sooner that the public safety and law enforcement agency knows about this, that is helpful information to them. So again, Mr. Chair, I almost called you Mr. President. Mr. Chair. Oh, no, Senator Champion left. I believe this is a fairly simple
it's still raining.
bill. It has a very minimal
So we're here.
penalty for failure to report. And again, I'm somewhat surprised, I guess, often by the level of objection to things that really are somewhat common sense.
Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Not seeing any. Senator Westland moves that Senate File 606 be recommended to pass and be referred to the Senate Committee on Finance.
Channels for
As amended.
Mr. Chair,
Senator Howe.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
137.
I just have a question I'm just trying to figure out what we're trying to address with this bill and who doesn't report. Do we have any statistics on how many don't get reported now? Because I can't imagine a situation where a lawfully owning gun owner would not report their gun stolen.
What
I
gun
can't think of an incident where that does happen.
That gun
Is there statistics out there that
and then they'll get charged?
number of gun owners that don't report their lost or missing guns?
Senator Westland.
That's how that's going to work.
Mr. Chair, I don't have that
And this
information at my fingertips,
lady
and I'm glad to hear that most
using
responsible gun
term
owners
lightly
actually
knows
do
exactly
report
what
their
it's
guns lost
gonna-
and stolen. We want to ensure that that is something that all gun owners abide by going forward in the future.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Senator Howe.
I do believe that
Okay, I've had a situation
that the only ones that
figure out
don't
whether
report this are the
gun
ones that shouldn't have the guns
at my
anyway.
place.
So
Or
in my
whether I
view of this, it goes after
stop
the
working.
law-abiding gun owner
Or
if
my
he
folks'
doesn't
place,
realize
me and my
or
dad went hunting.
reasonably should have
It's
known
safe.
that his gun was missing. I mean, I've got guns at multiple locations, not just in my home.
Thank you.
And I might not be there for a while. And then when I go there, I may not just check to see if my firearm is there yet. And that reasonably should have known piece concerns me that,
That's exactly what it's about.
and yeah, it's a petty misdemeanor and I might get just a ticket, but it just goes another thing that goes after the law abiding folks instead of going after those folks that I think we don't enforce the gun laws that we have on those perpetrators of
Why are we not seeing
the criminal
more calls
activity that we
for
currently have. But thank you,
basically
Mr. Chair.
enhanced penalties
Thank you,
for
Senator
criminals
Howe.
who
I
steal
actually,
guns?
for one, can imagine situations where a lawful gun owner would prefer that the law enforcement agencies not know that they have guns. I don't think it's too much of a stretch to envision that kind of a situation, but if you have more experience than I do with guns, Senator Howe. Not seeing any further discussion. Senator Westland moves that Senate File 606 as amended be recommended to pass and be re-referred to the Senate Committee on Finance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion prevails. All right. We are on, members. Senator Westland has another bill while she's there, and we'll invite.
And we're going to back this up, back to the start of this.
Senate file.
For what we didn't see. Because apparently I just like torturing myself and everybody else.
2759.
Actually, I want you
What's
guys.
the number, Senator Westland?
2759.
2759 before the committee. I do not have one.
These are your rules, kids. They're not represented.
All right, members, this is the original committee of referral. We have a delete everything amendment with the packet distributed to you. Senator Westland moves adoption of the author's amendment, the A5. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted.
Democrats rule these committees right
Senator Westland, to your bill.
like they do.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just for everyone's understanding, what we've done is we've combined several family law bills that have actually been dropped. A couple of them, I think, were dropped last year. One of them was dropped this year. I'm affectionately referring to this as the mini family law.
Here's one of the reasons I want to go back, Brad.
There are a number of provisions here, Mr. Chair and members, that are dealing with several topics. The first being parenting time, the second being spousal maintenance, and the third being antenuptial and postnuptial agreements. I do have a testifier here, but just to provide some basic background information, I'm going to address the public policy statement first.
Basis for making
Let's
that
see where
determination.
All right, let's go back.
Any members have any questions about Article 1 before we go on to?
We're going to back that ass up here.
Is passed. The A1 amendment is a delete.
First one, the A1 is a delete everything.
And this is today. We're just going a little bit back in time. This
Looks
is where
like
they introduced their safe storage
There's
ordinance.
an A5 drafted to the A1. Okay, so
Why do those guys look like they'd love to get naked and touch Peters? Just so.
Senator Umu Verbatim, would you be willing to offer the A1 and incorporate the A5 into it?
Yes, Mr. Chair, so moved.
All right, Senator Umu Verbatim moves adoption of the A1 as amended by the A5.
Let me
All those in favor say aye.
take that.
Opposed? Motion prevails. The amendments are
Put it
adopted.
at least a little bit out on one.
Senator Gustafson, tell us about your bill, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, members to the committee. Today, I have the privilege to present SF 4312. It's a bill that will codify into law standards for the safe storage of firearms. I have an author's amendment to present that we just passed. The A1 amendment is a delete everything amendment that I have spent many months in discussions and negotiations with law enforcement, attorneys, gun owners from around Minnesota.
And she is
I believe this amendment makes the bill stronger. I appreciate everyone's input. Briefly, the DE amendment accomplishes 5 things. It changes the name of the section of statute to safe and secure storage of firearms, adds and strengthens definitions in statute, clarifies language, the access of firearms subdivision, increases and clarifies penalties for violating statute, extends limitations of applying these standards to firearms legally transported in motor vehicles, firearms used in the Minnesota State High School League events, as well as firearms being owned or possessed by law enforcement in the line of duty or are stored at a police or sheriff's station.
There are some arguments.
Mr. Chair, I'm hoping, the amendment was moved. The bill was drafted with one clear and safety, well-being of our children. Unsecured guns pose clear safety risks to our communities, particularly to our youngest. When guns are not stored safely or securely, they are accessible to unsupervised minors. The risk of death or injury significantly increases. In the home, the possibility of kids discovering and playing with firearms is far too common of an occurrence. It seems each week we hear stories of children accidentally discharging their parents' firearms while playing at home, often leading to significant harm to themselves or others. In the handouts that you have received, you will see evidence of this in Minnesota, 3 just in the last year. Many parents assume children are unaware of firearms in the home, but research from the Journal of Pediatric and Adolescent Medicine has shown that children often know where the guns are kept and have handled them without their parents' knowledge. Members, I've had the privilege of being a teacher for most of my life. Securing and safely storing firearms has ramifications beyond the home. It impacts our classrooms as well. According to the Minnesota Department of Education, 70 handgun or long guns were confiscated in Minnesota schools during the 2021 to 2022 school year. That is more than double the highest previous total and 3 times the 22 guns recovered during 2018 to 2019. The bill makes sense. It is clear that safe storage practices help prevent unauthorized access to firearms, and with gun violence now leading the cause of death for children 19 and under in the United States, we must do something. This single bill won't save every life, but even one tragedy can be prevented when this bill is law. Then our efforts will have been successful. You will find letters of support in your committee packet, including Children's Minnesota, Minnesota Hospital Association, Minneapolis Public Schools, and the Minnesota Medical Association. I have some testifiers who will speak in support of the bill as well. I also have Allison Chai, Senior Counsel for Everytown for Gun Safety, who will help answer any technical questions. The time to pass this law is long overdue, and the time for this legislation is now.
Rollo's going live.
Thank you, and I do look forward to any questions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Gustafson. Let's go ahead to listen to testifiers. Who would you like to start with, Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our first testifier, I'll let him introduce himself, is Chief Hodges from Bloomington.
Chief Hodges, welcome to the Judiciary
Thank you,
Public Safety
Mr.
Committee.
Chair. I have the privilege of being the Chief of Police for the city of Bloomington, which, if you don't know, is the 4th largest city in the state of Minnesota. And I lead a department that is not only fully staffed, we're overstaffed as a police department. So we do pretty good in Bloomington. Now I'll get off the Bloomington kick. In general, I am not supportive of additional gun legislation. I think that enforcing gun laws such as felon in possession or possession of firearms by those who shouldn't possess them is something that we really need to focus on. But there are 2 areas that I do think that we do need to strengthen our gun laws. One being the straw purchases, and the next one being safe storage of firearms. Why is that? Earlier in my career, when I was a deputy in Dakota County, we'd often respond to residents that had $10,000 safes, but had gotten their guns stolen out of the safes because the safes were not locked. This is an area that I do think that as gun owners, I've owned guns for 30 years. I carry a gun every single day.
Then why are we not talking about enhanced penalties
for locking up our guns? And that's something that I really believe that this bill does. I do believe that this bill addresses concerns that we had last year with the bill. And I do think that if we get this passed, that we can hopefully prevent some unintended consequences from kids getting access to these weapons that they shouldn't.
Multitude of crimes committed just in that.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Chief.
You want to charge me because I didn't have my gun.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have survivor Hillary Brazel.
Okay.
Ms. Brazel? Oh. Chief, thank you.
Where is Tuck Firance?
Ms. Brazel, welcome to the Judiciary Committee. If you could go ahead and state your name for the record and present your testimony.
Good afternoon.
Oh, shit, Bob,
My
you're
name is
right.
Hillary Brazel. Thank you to members of the committee for hearing my
Oh, now I
testimony
need to find a picture of him.
SF 4312. Thank you specifically for Chair Latz and for Senator Gustafson for authoring this legislation and for connecting me to this important and personal topic. I'm here to share the tragic story of Michael Brazel. He was my husband who was murdered in the front yard of our home at 7:30 on a Saturday morning, May 6, 2023. Michael had noticed a young man breaking into our car and went out into our front yard to confront him. Michael was instantly shot 3 times in his chest and back by a 17-year-old young man who was the lookout for the crime. I awoke to those 3 shots and a loud car driving away from our home. My 14-year-old son did awake to this same loud car pulling up to our house, heard yelling in our front yard, and witnessed most of the scene where his father was murdered.
Let me look at.
As a pediatric nurse, I was the first responder for Michael. I tried to perform life-saving measures while my older son called 911, and my younger son watched the horror play out. Michael was attended to by the St. Paul Police Department and St. Paul Fire Department before being brought to HCMC, where he was pronounced dead within 35 minutes of the shooting. My sons instantly no longer had their father. I no longer had my husband, and the ripples of his death by gun violence have torn apart our lives and those of our close friends, neighbors, and countless other community members. Michael was a dedicated father, family member, friend, a skilled carpenter, an artist, and a youth hockey coach. My list of concerns related to Michael's murder is long. There were 4 young men in the car, ages 17, 18, 19, and 22. They all had previous history with guns, violent crimes, both as juveniles and some as adults. They all had a criminal history and were on probation around the time of the crime. And specifically, the shooter had just been released from probation in April of 2023 from a previous crime of holding up another student at gunpoint in a high school bathroom just to try and steal a cell phone. The shooter was also pulled over on May 2nd, 2023, just 4 days prior to my husband's death in the South Metro, but nothing came of this traffic stop. These same 4 young men went out car shopping, looking for things to steal, starting on the night of Friday, May 5th, 2023, through the early morning of May 6th, 2023. Michael was murdered over the valuables that were in my car. It amounted to a phone charger and a bag of makeup. These young men had planned ahead to bring a gun with them while they went car shopping for protection, and they took turns as lookouts for each other while breaking into cars. The gun they used to murder Michael was stolen from an unsecured closet that was not properly stored by the gun owner. Had this gun been properly stored, I believe Michael might still be alive. Following Michael's murder, the stolen gun was kept under another driver's seat in a different vehicle by the same man who broke into my family's car. With this, I take that to believe that this gun was kept so that it could be needed or used in future crimes. St. Paul Police Department retrieved that same gun from under the driver's seat through a traffic stop a month after Michael's murder. This helped us have a strong case to convict the young men who murdered my husband. 2 of them pled guilty to Michael's murder and are currently serving time, but nothing will ever replace Michael's life that was taken and all the life that we had yet to live together. It was only 57 seconds that the criminals spent at our home that morning. They drove up to my home, broke into my car, interacted with Michael, shot him 3 times in the chest and back, and sped away. In less than 1 minute's time, a 17-year-old created a lifetime of consequences, and our lives will never be the same. I urge you to support the legislation of Bill SF 4312. I believe the proper storage of guns could have prevented Michael's murder and can prevent this type of tragedy from destroying other lives in the state of Minnesota in the future.
Now it's the original gun owner's fault.
Thank you.
Ms. Brazel, thank you for sharing your
Never
story
mind
with
the
us.
fact that these kids shouldn't even have been out on the street.
I also have on
Never mind the
our
fact that they
testifier
were
list Gretchen Damon.
Before they even got to 25.
Ms. Damon is here. She can come forward.
Mr. Chair, we also have one more testifier.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Go ahead, Senator Gustafson. Who do you have next?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We have Rolf Olson.
I'm going to try to breeze through something else just to check while we're watching this.
Mr. Olson, welcome to the Judiciary Committee. Go ahead and state your name and present your
Thank you.
testimony.
Chairman Latz, members of the committee, my name is Rolf Olson. I'm a husband, I'm a Lutheran pastor, I'm the father of a murdered daughter. And I'm here today to share my story and voice support for SF 4312. I thank Senator Gustafson for her work on this important issue. In October 2007, our middle child, Catherine, went to a house in Savage to answer a Craigslist ad for a babysitter. What she encountered was not a woman needing childcare. She met a 19-year-old man holding his father's pistol. It was over in less than 5 minutes. Catherine arrived with a backpack full of children's toys and books. She did part-time work as a nanny to help finance her path toward a graduate degree in Spanish. She loved kids. They loved her. This trip to Savage was nothing new, but it was her last. Catherine was brilliant, creative, risk-taking, curious, adventurous. Her dream was to put together her love of Spanish and theater for a career, but that dream ended with a bullet in her back. Well, since then, I've spoken on this issue from different angles. As a dad, I've talked about grief. As a pastor, I've talked about forgiveness. As a police chaplain for many years, I testified in these chambers about the brokenness in our communities. Now, as a gun owner and hunter myself, I'm not opposed to guns, but I certainly know how deadly they are. I know the consequences of their misuse. But I know that what we are doing now is not producing acceptable results. My daughter was murdered with an unsecured pistol kept in his father's dresser drawer. It was kept there next to a pill bottle filled with bullets. Had that pistol been properly stored, it's quite likely that my daughter would still be alive. So I'm glad to see that SF 4312 includes legal consequences for failure to secure a firearm. Lives will be saved by proper storage. Now, there's nothing in this law that hinders ownership and safe use of a firearm. That's the goal that every true sportsman supports. My story is just one example of how unsafe storage can have tragic consequences. So I trust that you will use Minnesota wisdom to help stop the carnage that is plaguing our country and our state. Thank you, Senator Gustafson, for carrying this legislation. Thank you to the committee for the work you are doing and for your time today.
Thank you, Mr. Olson, for sharing your personal story with us. Senator Gustafson, do you have any other testifiers you'd like to call forward?
No, Mr. Chair, I do not. Thank you.
So we do have a list of people that had signed up ahead of time to testify.
Just don't have too many trouble dropping that dinger off.
Rob Vanasek from Everytown. Do you hear? Come on forward.
He's at a friend's funeral, so he's unable to testify.
Okay. He's not available. Timberland Mazakis. Did I say that properly? Close enough. I get that a lot. Okay, from Students Demand Action at the University of Minnesota. Go ahead and state your full name, pronouncing your last name the way I should say it, and proceed with your testimony.
Good morning, Chair Latz, committee members, and staff. My name is Timberland Majakis. I am a junior at the University of Minnesota and founder and leader of Students Demand Action at the U. I am originally from Michigan and attended Michigan State for my first 2 years of college. I am testifying today in support of SF 4312, strengthening requirements for secure storage of firearms and ammunition. On February 13th of 2023, my life was irreparably changed after a man entered Michigan State University and shot 8 of my classmates, killing 3 of them. After receiving an email to run, hide, fight, I sat barricaded in an on-campus gym only 1 block from the shooting.
And it was nothing about safe storage. Sorry, little girl, you're running your smoker on a subject that's not even related.
For hours, I listened to police scanners, texted my family and friends to tell them I loved them, and saw my life flash before my eyes more times than I can count. When the door to the gym suddenly opened, people began to scream and run for their lives. I thought I was going to die. I am here today, a little over 1 year later, still unable to shake that feeling of certain death. The trauma caused by gun violence is one I share with thousands across my state of Michigan, Minnesota, and nationwide. In Minnesota, an average of 43 children and teens die by guns every year, 49% of which are suicides. Secure storage of firearms and ammunition can save hundreds of young lives while preventing youth suicide, accidental shootings, and school shootings. It is time for Minnesota to act before another young life is lost at the hands of preventable gun violence. I encourage members of this committee to vote yes on SF 4312.
If your laws
Thank
could
you for the
prevent
opportunity
shit,
to testify
laws against
today.
murder would be sufficient.
Thank you, Ms.
to stop that guy
Majakis.
from going in and murdering.
I have Barbara Nye. Is she not here?
You could solve that issue
Okay.
even better and not deprive
Then
people
we
of their
will
rights
go
by allowing
to,
students to actually carry to defend themselves.
These are
No,
all,
it's nothing to do with safe storage.
oh, she's online.
That's the shooting I'm thinking about.
Nephi
The shooting was
Cole
involved
from the
some other
National
stuff,
Shooting Sports Foundation, I believe is online.
and then walked on campus and started shooting people. It's nothing to do with safe storage. It's not like
Good morning,
safe
Mr.
storage-
Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I assume you can hear me okay?
Yes, go right ahead. Just go ahead and state your name first, if you would.
My name is Nephi Cole. That's Nephi-Cole. I'm the Director of Government Relations and State Affairs for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which is the Firearms Trade Association of America. As you know, we have a number of great programs, such as Operation Child Safe, Secure Store, and others. And we represent the 9,000 retailers, manufacturers, and distributors of firearms in the United States of America. We have some concerns about this bill, and not questioning the good intentions, because we all believe that one death from a firearm is too many. But there are some applicational errors and holes in this bill that I wanted to bring attention to. The bill has some technical problems, and with such a high penalty on this bill, we think that misses the mark and it's bad policy. So first, the definition of firearm centers around a device designed to be used as a weapon in the bill, but it doesn't deal with the full life cycle of firearms. It talks about permanently inoperable, but doesn't deal with the time frame before that, specifically components and build parts. As soon as a receiver is serialized, it becomes a firearm. So a serialized receiver with no barrel or bolt is by federal definition a firearm, so is a suppressor, and they're benign unless assembled with other components. This proposal also fails to recognize that firearms can be temporarily rendered inoperable mid-life cycle. And that's in more ways than simply using a lock. Removal of a bolt, splitting a receiver set, removing firing pins, these are all things that render any firearm inoperable. At SHOT Show, the largest event of its kind in the world, the one that we run, nothing can go bang, but there are no locks on the floor. Other internals are altered or temporarily removed. Exemptions should be broader than just the locks that are in this proposal. A firearm that is rendered safe should be your standard. We have some other concerns about authorized users as defined here, but that doesn't seem to, this bill doesn't seem to create a carve out for authorized users such as youth hunters. We noticed there's a carve out for folks who are participating in youth target shooting sports. But in Minnesota, at age 14 to 18, you can hunt unaccompanied by an adult. That indicates that you'd be legally in possession of a firearm out of the arm's reach of the firearm's owner.
Good deal, Sam.
What about smart guns? Not all smart guns are biometric. This proposal feels like it was prepared with a limited view on and limited technical expertise on firearms use and storage issues. We don't think it's ready.
Just be clear, it was prepared by every town.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Cole.
Exactly jack shit about guns.
Our next testifier.
That's who it was prepared by.
Is Rob Dorr.
You'll see that.
Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. Yeah. Mr. Dorr, come on.
Let me find Rob's channel. Let me post his too. Or no, am I thinking about Rob or I'm thinking about just Minnesota Gun Owners?
Welcome to the committee. If you go ahead and identify yourself and present your testimony.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, I'm Rob Dorr. I'm the Senior Vice President of the Minnesota Gun Owners Caucus. I do recognize that this bill is significantly different than the one that was introduced last year, and there's been some changes that have made since it was introduced in the other body. That being said, we're still opposed due to some other issues that still remain in the bill. First off, I think it's important to realize that right now, under current Minnesota law, loaded firearms, you cannot have those around children. You can't store a firearm where you can reasonably anticipate that a child may access it. This bill goes beyond that and creates a strict liability for all firearm storage, regardless if there's any children in the home or if there's any unauthorized people in the home or who will ever be in the home. This treats a farmer who lives by himself in Roseau, who keeps a firearm available to defend his livestock from predators, the same as a daycare operator in Edina. And that one-size-fits-all solution doesn't recognize the realities of how different people live their lives in the state. This is also dramatic.
In some of the arguments you'll hear from the pro-gun people are get off the wall a little bit, but, and I'm pausing it because we're not live anymore, not on the hearing. The hearings, they went over to another subject. I'll check in on it again live in a minute to see whether they hit anything else on guns. But the thing about it is, so out of all the situation where law enforcement could be at your place, they could be investigating something else. It could be a situation where there was a medical emergency, you name it. Say you live alone, and much like people that I was around, would have guns in different places, ready to rock and roll in case someone broke in, no kids around, no nothing, completely safe. Well, if the police ever came there or EMS ever came there for a medical emergency, something like that, well, then these people are liable for all those guns. They can be charged for not storing them safely. It's absolutely idiotic. It takes no account for someone with even older children that has trained their children to properly handle and safely handle firearms. None of that. It's merely you don't have your gun stored the way the state says, so the state can come in and arrest you, fine you, throw you in jail. Is where this is going to lead. And it's absolutely ridiculous. In Minnesota's, I'd like to see an AK broken that well, unless it was a goat gun.
Shift in that firearms culture, and what's a little concerning to us is there's no education component. So right now we're criminalizing a benign, peaceful behavior with a criminal charge without really people being able to be aware or understand that this law has been passed. Going to the bill language, I share the concerns with on line 1.9 of the author's amendment, the permanent inoperable. There's many ways and many reasons that a firearm may be rendered inoperable, such for cleaning, for maintenance, for repair, or for construction, all lawfully, but is completely incapable of being fired. On line 1.14, it lists tamper-proof container without actually defining what a tamper-proof container is. Is a safe that somebody buys, an economical safe that has a lock combination or a biometric from Walmart, is that tamper-proof? What classifies it? And it differs from the language used on line 1.17 of tamper-resistant, which also isn't defined, but now we have different standards of tamper listed there. Going to line 2.1 and 2.2, it says under the direct physical control or reach of the person. This poses a problem. Again, if let's say you're at shooting in your backyard.
Okay, let's throw this one out here. And let me make myself bigger. Let's do it side by side. Okay. So YouTube, I'm about to show a frame, not a gun, not a functional gun. So this is just a frame. This is considered a firearm by the ATF. This is inoperable. No barrel, no slide, no nothing. By these jackasses, if I break a gun down, I decide I want to run to the store real fast, and something happens, my inoperable gun, my frame is sitting out there, that's still a firearm. These sons of bitches could charge me with a crime. Yeah.
Plenty of areas in the state, people are allowed to shoot lawfully on their own property. it's unsafe to bring the firearm down range with you while you're putting up new targets. This would, a unloaded safe firearm could be left on a table while somebody goes to change out a target and be in violation of this law. And there is an exception for shooting ranges on line 2.24, but that doesn't encompass private or even public lands where you can lawfully target shoot. Even if no children or unauthorized people are in the vicinity. And finally, I think, the idea of a misdemeanor crime for just behavior that's already perfectly lawful right now is of concern. Our members, if they're paying attention, may be informed without this education component. But I'm also thinking of some of the indigent clients that I've represented that are under supervised release or they're under probation terms, that they already have a reduced expectation of privacy by the terms of their release. Now they may be ending up with probation violations and additional charges for a firearm that's in the home that may not even be theirs. There's really no way to track who's the owner or the possessor of that firearm. So while I appreciate the work that's been done on this bill, I think it needs quite a bit more work in order to be ready for prime time.
Thank you, Mr. Dorr.
No, it needs to be flushed.
So we have Brian Gosh,
like any other piece of shit.
Gosh, come on forward.
Good afternoon, Senator Latz, member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Thank you for letting me testify today. I really appreciate it. My name is Brian Gosh. I'm a lawyer and registered lobbyist with the National Rifle Association. I'm going to not duplicate any testimony. I'm sure you'd appreciate that. But I would like to point out a couple of things also, that this only singles out firearms. It doesn't seek to secure any other type of objects that could be considered dangerous or be used to hurt oneself or other people. So it doesn't seek to secure knives, explosives, rope, vehicles, all things that have been used to hurt people or themselves or others. Many factors go into how individuals safely store their firearms. And because of the various ways in which people do that, there's not a one-size-fits-all approach that's going to work. And this type of law would essentially, it removes the negligence part under current Minnesota law that's required before one could be charged with the crime. So currently in Minnesota, we have a safe storage requirement. It requires negligence. This removes that. You can see that in the amendment. It strikes the word negligent. And it becomes more of a strict liability of, if you simply don't store it this way, you are going to be liable for the misdemeanor.
Especially if we get a larger number of people in the stream,
control of a
everybody throws out
child
their state,
or
and
a
we go to
prohibited
look
person, then you
at their
become a
state
felon.
to see what's going
If it
on.
gets used in the commission of a crime, you become a felon with a greater penalty. And so you're going after the innocent in this case. So you have a guilty party who broke the law, got control of a firearm they're not supposed to, and they use it in a commission of a crime or just simply get possession of it. And now you're punishing the individual who simply owned the firearm but didn't store it the way that this bill proposes. I think the Bloomington police chief had it right. The focus really should be on enforcing existing laws. And there's a lot of existing laws in the books in Minnesota now that should be enforced and make this proposal unnecessary.
Colorado didn't want to do it, but
and before I get into those, I will say that the surrounding states of Minnesota do not have a law like this. The country does not have a law like this. This would be a one of a kind.
Colorado, it's still a misdemeanor.
But if you do look at the surrounding states, in Wisconsin, it does not have a safe storage requirement.
Yeah, tell me about it, Bob. I've watched a lot of that lately too.
It does say that it has a reckless standard that it gets applied. And only to minors under 14 who get the firearm without permission and exhibit it in an unlawful way or cause bodily harm. Iowa makes it unlawful to allow access to an unsecured loaded firearm to a minor under the age of 14 without permission of the parent, and such minor exhibits the firearm in a public place in an unlawful manner. South Dakota and North Dakota have no safe storage requirement. Current law in Minnesota, Minnesota statute 609.378 subdivision 1C provides that a person who intentionally or recklessly, so that's similar to the Wisconsin law, causes a child under the 14 years of age, also similar to Wisconsin and Iowa,
to be placed in a situation likely to substantially harm the child's physical health or cause the child's death as a result of the child's access to a loaded firearm is guilty of child endangerment and may be sentenced to imprisonment for not more than 364 days or to a payment of a fine of not more than $3,000 or both. If that endangerment results in substantial harm to the child's physical health, they can be sentenced to not more than 5 years or a payment of not more than $10,000 or both. Also, current law in Minnesota, 624.713 subdivision 1.1, minors are already prohibited from possessing a pistol, ammunition, or semi-automatic military style assault weapon or any firearm if such minor had committed a crime of violence. Pursuant to Minnesota statute 609.66 subdivision 1B, it's a felony for a person to furnish firearms or ammunition in a municipality to a minor without the consent of the parent, guardian, or local police. Similar provisions already exist in federal law under 18 U.S.C. section 922X2, which prohibits the possession or otherwise transfer of a firearm to children or to people under age of 18. Also, in Minnesota statute 609.666, subdivision 2, a person is guilty of a gross misdemeanor who negligently stores or leaves a firearm in a location where a person knows or reasonably knows or should know that a child is likely to gain access. That's current law. That's the statute they're seeking to amend. Also under Minnesota statute 624.7162 subdivision 2, notice is required at each business location where firearms are sold by a firearms dealer in a conspicuous location with the following language: that is unlawful to store or leave a loaded firearm where a child can obtain access. These are all current laws. The last statute I'll reference for minors is 260B.425 subdivision 1A, which says any person by act, word, or omission who encourages, causes, or contributes to delinquency of a child or to a child's status as a juvenile pet is guilty of a gross misdemeanor. The felony level in this amendment also applies if a prohibited person gets possession of that firearm, and federal law already prohibits a prohibited person from possessing a firearm. That's found in 18 U.S.C. section 922G and 922D. So given the diversity of state and federal laws already on the books, you don't need this amendment. You don't need this bill. Also, there's already a lot of exceptions included in this bill. And I think anytime you have a lot of exceptions, it tends to show you might be starting in the wrong place. But also noticeably absent from the exceptions are when a child obtains the firearm as a result of an illegal entry by any person. That was stricken with the amendment. Here's another important one. When the child gains access to a loaded firearm and uses it in the lawful exercise of self-defense. So imagine a child's mom is being attacked by an intruder. Child gets hold of that firearm, uses it in self-defense of others and self-defense of his mother. The owner of that firearm is now a felon. Owner of the firearm didn't do anything wrong. The owner should be on the bad guy, the intruder who's attacking his mother. Yeah. That exception is not included in this bill. There's not an exception for when a person stores or leaves a loaded firearm, reasonably believes that a child is not likely to be present when the firearm is stored or left. And these are exceptions that you'll find in the Wisconsin law.
Internet's acting crazy or this.
There's also noticeably absent an exception for when the child accessed the firearm and the bodily harm they caused was a result from an accident that occurred when the child used the firearm for hunting, target practice, or other lawful means. And another big and noticeably absent exception is hunting. If you
Sam.
set your shotgun down,
like this, it doesn't matter whether you have
lunch
kids
break,
or anybody else
and you're
home.
with your group talking, but you're out of
You don't
reach of
store
your
your
firearm,
guns according to
that's
the way
going to
the
be a
government
violation. And that's just common practice in Minnesota and other places. I see you want me to wrap up, and I appreciate that.
I've read plenty of articles where
one last thing, if I can, just that
14-year-olds,
I think
16-year-olds,
I want to use this example. I used it on the House side as well, and that is if you apply the same logic to a vehicle, because vehicles can be used to hurt people, but it's common at times to quick run into a store, leave your vehicle running. But if this same law applied to vehicles and you left your vehicle running outside while you ran in to buy one item, and a child or prohibited person got possession of your vehicle and used it to run somebody over, you as simply as being the owner who didn't secure their vehicle is now going to be a felon. And so, Mr. Chair, thank you for the time, members of the committee. I'll stand by for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Gosh. That's all that I have who signed up ahead of time to testify. Is there anyone else in the room who wanted to testify in connection with this bill? Sir, come on forward. Welcome to the Judiciary Committee. If you could just state your name for the record and then tell us what you'd like to say.
Hi, I'm Stanley Renty. I'm part of SDA with Timberland. I'm the vice president. And I just like to provide some dates of gun violence at the University of Minnesota that are most recent. I recognize that there's others at other colleges, but I don't go there, so I can only speak for Minnesota.
Let's do something real fast, just because we're looking at safe stores, laws, and stupid shit. God, all the freaking ads and BS they throw at you. Let's listen to this. This was an 11-year-old that shot a home intruder.
My brother-in-law died suddenly, and now my sister and her kids
well, hold
have
on.
to
We got
sell
an
their
ad
home.
first.
That's why I told my husband
Let's skip an ad.
Alabama 11-year-old shoots suspected home invader. Chris Gaither was home alone petting the dogs on Wednesday morning when he heard a noise upstairs. The 11-year-old boy from Talladega, Alabama, told NBC affiliate WVTM-TV that he was scared, so he grabbed a knife and steadied himself. Chris said that a man appeared on the stairwell, but when confronted, he ran back up upstairs. When the man reappeared moments later, the boy told WVTM-TV the individual was holding a gun. When he was coming down the stairs, that's when he told me he was going to kill me. Expletive, you and all that, Chris said. Instead of running, Chris told the station he upgraded his weaponry, picking up a 9mm handgun that was in the home. Chris said he threatened to kill the man and ordered him to get out of the house. I guess when I pulled the gun out on him, he didn't think it was a real gun because he didn't worry about it, Chris told the station. He just kept on walking. Not only was Chris holding a real gun, the boy knew how to use it. His stepfather had been giving him shooting lessons, he told WVTM-TV. Once the man made it outside, Chris fired a warning shot. The man, who was carrying a stolen laundry hamper, began running. Chris emptied the magazine, firing off 12 shots by the time the intruder neared a fence in the family's front yard, the 11-year-old told the station.
All right, so anyway, that's an 11-year-old using a gun for home defense. And underneath a law like this, even though that kid defended himself, the parents would be criminally liable.
February 24th, 2024, at 10:25 p.m., shots were fired at Sanford Hall. March 10th, 2024, 3:11 a.m., a victim was shot down the street from Roderick Hall. January 11th, 2024, 7:21 a.m., there was a threat to the University of Minnesota of multiple people being shot. September 3rd, 2023, at 11:43 p.m.,
what's up, my brother?
There were shots fired near St. Paul Student Center.
Yeah, we got to believe that's
July 2nd, 2023, 3:36 p.m., shots fired near the University of Minnesota campus. And finally, June 27th, 2023, at 1:18 a.m., in Dinkytown, near the University of Minnesota, a person was pointing guns at cars that were passing by. I will say the most recent one, Sanford Hall, my friends,
40
they were
people killed
sleeping
and 100 wounded.
and they got woken up to shots being fired near them. And me being me, with a little bit of military training, I went out to try and get to them. Of course, I was turned away, but it just proves to note that this needs to pass. There are students at the University of Minnesota that have guns on campus and are willing to use them for harm and also protection. There are people in the surrounding communities who are willing to come to the University of Minnesota, threaten us, and have us live in fear day by day. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Anyone else wish to testify? I see one more. Okay, I only see one more hand, so that'll be it. Sir, come on forward. You'll be the last testifier.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Ben Dorr. I am the Executive Director for Minnesota Gun Rights, and our membership are completely opposed to this legislation. Frankly, I've been getting a lot of emails from gun owners calling it tyrannical trash. I don't know, maybe you guys have been getting some of those too. And as the bill sponsor has said, this bill won't save all the lives, so we know it's going to lead to another gun control bill and another one and another one and another one. And so we're opposed to this one. We're opposed to the next one. We're opposed to the last one. And there will be a political price paid in this election cycle, next election cycle, and every election cycle that follows for the swing district voters who vote for this legislation. So I encourage this committee to vote no and to not put it on the Senate floor for a vote.
Thanks for just stopping in, man.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Dorr. All right, we're going to open this up for discussion among members of the committee.
Let's look at
Senator Limmer.
Let's roll up to this real fast. This is what Damon was just talking about. Hopefully I got past all the ads. So Russia says 40 people killed, more than 100 wounded in an attack in Moscow concert hall. Several gunmen burst into a large concert hall at the edge of Moscow on Friday, sprayed the crowd with automatic gunfire, killing at least 40, injuring more than 100, and setting fire to the venue in a brazen attack just days after President Vladimir Putin cemented his grip on power in a highly orchestrated electoral landslide. Highly organized, like that's never happened in America. Wasn't immediately clear what happened to the attackers. No immediate claims of responsibility. The attack, which left the concert hall in flames with a collapsed roof, was the deadliest attack in Russia in years and came as the country's war in Ukraine dragged into the third year. Russia's Federal Security Service, main domestic security and counterterrorism agency, said 40 people were killed, more than 100 were wounded in the attack at Caracas, I guess, City Hall, a large music hall on Moscow's western edge. The assailants threw explosives, triggered the massive blaze at the hall, which can accommodate 6,000, according to Russian news outlets. Video from outside showed the building on fire, with a huge cloud of smoke rising through the night sky. The street was lit up by blinking. The attack took place as crowds gathered for a performance by the famous Russian rock band Panic. Russian news reports being evacuated. Unknown number could have been trapped by the blaze. So this is going to that's going to be more than 40, I'll bet. Because it sounds like they don't have everybody out of there. Oh, and guess what Russia has in spades, like we looked at the other day? Gun control.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I begin, I wanted to bring attention to a letter.
88% of the vote. Yeah,
the Minnesota Sheriff's Association.
But hey,
Apparently, law
Biden
enforcement
got the most
community
votes ever
is
in history.
divided on this particular, divided on the support of this particular bill. At the very last paragraph, in conclusion, Sheriff's Association does not support Senate File 4312 and urge you to reconsider its provisions in favor of more balanced and effective approaches to firearm safety. Having said that, I did have some questions. With this kind of universal application to firearm safety and securing a firearm, it doesn't seem like there's consideration of those individuals that may require a gun for their own safety or defense in their own home. Now, Minnesota's provision.
Now, here's an interesting thought, and I think it come up in a stream not too long back. When you have a bill like this, one of these safe storage bills, absolutely idiotic. Why is there no rider in this bill that if someone is harmed because they can't get to their firearm in a quick enough time to actually defend themselves, that the people who wrote the bill, the people who voted on the bill to pass the bill, are liable for that injury? Kind of like, gun-free zones. If you want gun-free zones, you sign your name onto that shit, you're liable for the injuries that happen in your gun-free zone. Oh, wait a second. I remember. These people are tyrants. They don't want to be responsible for their own actions. Yeah, you're right about that, Barden.
Even in the event that there's a threat inside the home, one kind of has a duty to retreat until the very last possible moment. But nevertheless, those moments can come at a homeowner very quickly. Fumbling around for a lockbox or a key or anything else. I find this bill to be rather cumbersome in the face of defending oneself at home to a deadly threat. So I'm very concerned about this particular bill in that regard. I certainly am one who would promote firearm safety and securing a weapon. But nevertheless, there are individuals who feel threatened in their home or their neighborhood, and they aren't going to sleep. They may not even sleep well if they have a gun by their side in their own bedroom. But nevertheless, this is going to cause a delay in reaction.
Yeah, communism is a sliver
for the very lives that we are trying to protect through a firearm safety law like this, I believe we're going to create another issue of danger to individual citizens. So how do we correct this problem, Senator Gustafson?
So this condescending
Senator Gustafson
bitch right here.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Senator Limmer. I understand those concerns. I should have mentioned in the beginning, but we own guns in our home. We have two safes. One is a quick release. One is a more formal fortified safe. They're easy and quick to use when necessary, but they also provide a layer of protection. I hear a lot from people, and those are valid concerns about feeling safe in their homes and whether or not they're able to access their weapon when they need it. But as you stated, they still might feel that way even with a loaded gun next to their bed. So it's a safety issue that I don't know justifies not being able to lock it up. If you've been to a gun dealership recently and you've seen the level of safes that they offer in stores, you know that they offer quite a few that are made for a quick release and quick access if needed, but are also provide that protection so that somebody who we don't want to use our guns doesn't have access to them. I understand the need for safety.
Yes, Bradley, and that's
I understand that very well. But I would just say that, you know, the split second that people are talking about, I don't know if it
Hey,
is
Warsaw, you're dealing with state
something that
They ain't
should
leave nobody
supersede
alone.
what this bill is trying to do. We know that this will save lives. We know that there is a fear of people of
It's not
someone
gonna save
breaking
lives,
in.
it's going to
Unless you're sleeping with, you know, all of your windows open and your door wide open, you'll still have access to that quick second it might take to use a quick release safe. So I don't know that I want to put those moments where you're able to still access your gun as quickly as you need it to prevent this from doing what it can do, which is to save the lives of kids and other unauthorized users. I don't know that one right should overweigh the freedom of children to live safely in their homes.
Mr. Chair.
Senator Limmer.
Mr. Chair, also there's another segment of our population that often requires guns in their occupation. I'm talking about rural farm people that are living out in rural areas.
It doesn't matter if they
They
live
not
rural or not,
only
man.
have
More than
to
likely,
have
if
concerns
you're
about
average
predation, but they
you
also
live in
have
a-
concerns about their own
in an area
domestic
that's
farm
more
animals.
suburban,
Farm animals
more
at
kind
times
of
can be very
in the
dangerous.
city.
Take, for example, a cow who
Not to say that it
just
doesn't happen in
recently
rural areas,
had a calf. You even walk too close
but there's a
to
lot of folks
cow
that come
and
to
it'll
rural
take-
areas to break
it'll
homes because they know
take
they'll
you
get
down and
shot in the
trample you
face.
into dust. And many farmers have
And
a
he's going in
readily
this thing
available
about
gun
defending yourself
just
from
for those
cows or whatever.
emergencies. Fumbling around with a
Oh
lock
man, there's no wonder the
while
leftists in this country
a
win.
cow or a
It's-
bull or any other animal is going after your daughter or your son. You can't fumble around with a key or try and find a lockbox or
Oh,
put your
Sam, I
thumb on
completely
a
ignore gun free zones all the time.
biometric key of some sort
I
in your
completely
home while the danger is outside. This bill puts those individuals in even more danger. So I don't think it's really hitting the mark.
Yeah,
I believe
100%, Martin.
the bills that are now law, the balanced approach that we've created in Minnesota law, as Mr. Ghosh has referenced in Minnesota law, I believe is the balance. And it gives that opportunity. And if there is an endangerment,
No, they need to
an
get on their own
irresponsible,
tools at that point, Warsaw.
handling of a firearm, there are penalties, just almost exactly the same penalties as in your bill.
Oh, trust me, Bob. I try to avoid them, but if I'm going into one, I'm
I
carrying.
just don't
my shit.
understand why we have to go to this
Unless I'm going
extreme
to the metal detector, I'm
and this
carrying my shit.
radical in writing a bill to face the endangerment, but at the expense of
Anytime
limiting
you
and
deprive me
curtailing
of
the
my
freedom of other people to
tools
defend
for self-defense,
themselves
then the
and their
government should be
children and their
liable
home.
for anything that happens to me. Anything.
Senator Westland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, Senator Gustafson, I want to thank you so much for bringing this bill. And I know between last year and this year, you have done a significant amount of work, that you have talked to stakeholders, you have taken input, and you have put forward a bill that I know in your mind is better than the one that came forward last year. And I think that is an important piece of legislation that I certainly wholeheartedly support. There's nothing extreme or radical about this.
Yes.
There's nothing extreme or radical about the idea that when someone owns a deadly weapon,
it is extreme
that can be wielded in a matter of seconds,
government more power,
that shouldn't be properly
control
stored.
whatever you do in your own home.
And there is a problem. There is a problem with this because we know that kids are accessing this.
There's a problem
They are
with leftists. That's what there's a problem.
shooting siblings, parents, and so on and so forth. There's nothing extreme or radical about this. And I guess one thing that I'm always curious about is the fact that, as far as I understand, in this state, there's no training requirement for people to own a firearm. And I'm curious we don't need to have this discussion now, but I'd be really curious to know
just
if our friends from the NRA and our friends from the Gun Caucus support a training
Oh,
requirement.
lady, trust me, I ain't your
A
friend.
training requirement prior to the purchase and ownership of a firearm. That seems like that would be a reasonable, responsible thing to do.
Absolutely. This country
Our kids
has
can't wait
moved
any
so far
longer.
to that end.
This bill needs to pass. And if there are folks who want to keep working on this with Senator Gustafson, I have every reason to believe that she would be happy to do that and would continue to have those conversations. But what ends up happening every single time we have a conversation about guns, nobody ever wants to actually do anything about it. And so, Senator Gustafson, I appreciate your work on this. Thank you so much, and I will be gladly supportive of this bill.
Any further discussion among members of the committee? Senator Hoover Baden.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I also want to join in thanking you, Senator Gustafson, for all of your work on this bill. I want to thank all of our testifiers, but especially thank two of my constituents that we were able to hear from today, Rolf Olson and Hillary Brazel, who tragically lost loved ones and told us exactly how safe storage could have prevented that loss. So I'm proud to be a co-author of the bill, and I thank you for your work.
World where criminals suddenly obey laws.
Thank you, Mr.
Murder
Chair.
laws could have prevented that too.
Since it's already illegal to have a loaded firearm where a child can reasonably access it, it seems to me at least the primary purpose of this or the effect of this would be for those that don't have kids or maybe don't have any kids expecting to come over. So I guess why are we getting involved in the storage of somebody who doesn't have kids or doesn't have kids coming over? Is it just the remote chance that someone might break in to their house, or is there some other reason?
Senator Gustafson.
Mr. Chair, Senator Cruen, yeah, so we understand that even though most gun owners are doing the right thing and keeping things safe, and there are, you're right, some statutes that would put some of this in protection. I think you touched on one of those things. You're talking about theft, gun theft. If your guns aren't secure, so you might be responsible with them, you might live alone, you might know where they are at all times, but that doesn't prevent you or make you immune to theft. And as we've heard our testifiers talk about, that's a real issue. When people get guns that shouldn't have guns, especially when they steal them. And gun theft is something that continues to be a problem. Also, many firearm owners are already being safe, but if you take a look just from like the National Firearm Industry Trade Association, this is what they say. As a firearms owner, you are responsible for knowing how to properly handle your firearms, how to secure your firearms in a safe manner in your home. If for any reason you feel uncomfortable with or unable to accept these responsibilities, we strongly urge you not to own a firearm. So people who own firearms and are responsible with them understand that the safe storage is necessary, and they're.
Lady, I understand that theft is wrong. I understand that murdering people is wrong. How I choose to store my guns is up to me in my home, based for me on my children's level of education on firearms and their level of safety with firearms. This is a personal responsibility, not a government mandated responsibility, which has never worked in the history of governments. But these statists are going to continue to try because they don't want to blame the criminals. Yeah, Sam, dude. I try to avoid anything gun-free as far as, gun-free zone or whatever. But you bet your ass I will walk past a gun-free zone sign with my gun as long as I'm not having to go through a metal detector. If the criminals, the people who are going to rob you, shoot innocent people, if they don't care about those gun-free zone signs, why the hell should I care about it? And especially where I'm at, because the typical response to me carrying in a gun-free zone is going to be, hey, you a business owner going, hey, you need to leave, or otherwise I get trespassed. That's fine. If it comes down to that, I'm leaving. hey, whatever. You know, I got to reach for something on a shelf. My shirt slides up. Some Karen sees my gun and decides to freak out. And I get asked to leave the store. That's fine. I'm leaving. I'm not even going to argue at that point. Deuces, I'm gone. If your store is so shitty that you freaking are going to go with Karen over someone legally carrying a firearm, then you can kiss my ass at that point. If I've got to go through metal detectors, then yes, I'm going to have to do something because I've had to go in courthouses and stuff where I've had to leave my firearm in my vehicle. What should happen if people cared about actual firearm safety is I should be able to walk up to where the metal detectors are at, declare, hey, I've got my firearm. I need a safe place to store it real fast. There should be lockers right there. I should be able to grab a lock my firearm up, go do my business, come out of there, unlock my firearm, put my firearm back on, and go about my business so that my firearm isn't stolen outside of my vehicle, because criminals are smart enough to realize if people can't carry past these metal detectors, guess whose cars they're going to target? The people's cars that are around that area, because they're smart enough to notice, especially where I'm at, that people carry guns constantly. It's ridiculous. Oh man, these people are so ignorant of reality. It's mind-blowing. But you'll hear it's in a couple of minutes. You'll hear who is writing these bills, because one of the senators gets questioned about something in a bill, and she turns it over to the person next to her, and the person next to her announces who she is. You're going to hear who's writing these bills, because these senators aren't writing these bills. These bills are getting written by Everytown and Brady and other groups, and they're just handed over to these senators, and these senators will go, oh, gee, that sounds so good, and then they push them. Yeah. True that, Sam. You ought to be able to carry in a courthouse.
Most responsible gun owners are already locking up and securing their weapons, which we appreciate. We're just sort of putting this on the books so that every Minnesotan who owns a gun in our state rises to that level.
It's absolutely aneurysm inducing.
And Mr. Chair, and I don't mean to interrupt, after whatever order you think, my testifier can also add to some of those statutes that he's speaking of.
Okay, thank you. I'm just trying to keep in mind the time and the number of bills we still have to go through yet today. So we'll take the necessary testimony, but maybe not any supplementals unless it's a direct question. Senator Kroon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I'm also concerned about not having a negligence standard. It's seemingly the creation of a strict liability standard here. Somebody's acting responsibly under a reasonableness standard, then I'm uncomfortable criminalizing activity that is inherently reasonable. Sure, things that somebody can break into a house, but I think ultimately having a negligence standard would be better than making it a strict liability. But a practical question I have here is what happens if a firearm is stored illegally under your bill, or if this bill becomes a law, and let's say it's unclear who was in possession of that firearm or who was last in possession, who's charged in that situation? Is it the last person who possessed it, the owner, the homeowner?
Senator Gustafson.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to defer to my testifier.
Sure. I'm just like in any
If
other.
you go ahead and state your name for the record.
Got it. My name is Allison Shee.
Direct testimony through the chair, please.
Okay. Hello. Good afternoon, Chair. My name is Allison Shee, SHIH. I serve as senior counsel at Everytown for Gun.
Everytown for Gun Safety. This is who is writing these bills and putting these bills in the hands of Senator like Senator Karen Bitch over there, and then they're pushing them off on their supposed to be yeah, I could dig that hole so much deeper, but I'm not going to going to right now?
And safety. I'm happy to answer that question. But just like in any other criminal prosecution where the prosecutor has to have there needs to be probable cause to arrest, and you need to be able to prove beyond a reasonable doubt who is at fault and whose responsibility it was. If they don't have those facts, they would be unable to bring this kind of prosecution. But that is the kind of thing that is often sussed out in the investigation phase
thousands of dollars,
of any kind of criminal activity.
Defending themselves from your law.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just going to start with a comment that was alluded to earlier, that there's no training requirements even for kids. And I'll just let Senator Westland know, or hopefully be happy to know, that there are youth hunter certifications and programs and requirements. As a matter of fact, the Department of Natural Resources hosts courses throughout the year for kids to be able to get, students ages 11 and older to be able to take classroom-based firearm safety certification, which becomes valid at age 12. The class consists of a minimum of 4 separate class sessions that students must attend the entire class for each one in order to get the certificate. They learn safe handling of firearms, hunter responsibility, wildlife conservation, and then students also complete a field day as well, where they're trained in 7 scenario-based training opportunities that allow students to demonstrate commonly accepted principles of safety in both hunting and handling of firearms, which also includes shooting a .22 caliber rifle on a range. So there is training requirements for the DNR. I know the NRA, who spoke earlier, also has some pretty robust training both for youth and adults. If a person is to have a permit to carry a firearm, there is a robust day-long training that you must take in order to get that permit from your sheriff's department. So there is plenty of training that does take place for individuals. To the bill itself, I do have one question that did come up. I did talk to all my sheriffs who are opposed to this bill. They do think that there's some ambiguity to it. Senator Limmer did state some of the concerns of sheriffs throughout the state. The question that came up was for a law enforcement individual. We don't see a law enforcement exemption in the bill. So one of my sheriffs said, you know, if the question posed to me was, if I leave my patrol car vehicle to get gas, my long gun is in the squad car, is that unlawful? We don't see a law enforcement exemption in here, so why is there not an exemption for law enforcement? And can you speak to that? Because an officer should.
One, let me argue this. Law enforcement doesn't need any exceptions over what your average citizens get. And I heard part of this earlier. I was on my way back, just running out with my son to the store, where he talks about officers being trained and all this shit more than the average citizen. Horse shit. I am under a law, then the goddamn government agents, whether they are sheriffs, police officers, you name it, should be under the same damn law and the same requirements, period. But this is, oh man.
Be able to have some more leeway, certainly, than the average citizen.
But LEOs have training.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Senator Eichhorn. There is an exception for officers on duty.
Most say where that is. Can you spell that out for us? I want her to do it. I know.
Senator Eichhorn, Mr. Chair, Senator Eichhorn, I'm going to have to look at the particular line. There is a line. If you want to just give me a moment, I can find it for you.
Members, it's line 2.25.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Senator Eichhorn.
That only appears when they're on official duties. Again, law enforcement individuals are considerably more trained than the average citizen. And in my opinion, that duty should extend to licensed peace officers even beyond when they're on duty. I mean, they're so highly trained that I think they can handle such an exemption.
Mr. Chair, Senator Eichhorn, thank you. I just want to clarify what you're asking. Are you saying that when they're off duty, officers should leave their loaded weapons in their squad car without supervision.
That's kind of.
I'm saying officers should have an exemption. That's all I'm saying. Officers know how to properly store and train their firearms. Again, that exemption should be for law enforcement, not just when they're on duty.
Senator Cruz.
But law enforcement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just going to, some of the issues that were raised by some of the testifiers, I thought I would just see if you have a response. It seemed like reasonable questions, but on line 1.9,
law enforcement is
permanently,
trained to
the word
trample your
permanently,
rights.
and we heard about a whole bunch of different scenarios where a firearm would be
Sorry,
inoperable,
angry
but
cop.
not necessarily permanently. So what's the reason to
Angry
have
Sarge, bunch of other people I follow.
permanently in the bill?
It's just the
Senator
fucking
Gustafson.
streets.
Chair, Senator Cruen, the idea is just that we don't really want any sort of ambiguity around whether or not that weapon would be able to be used. I understand that inoperable versus permanently inoperable there might be some room for a change in language there. I would be happy to have further conversations with you, but that's why it was specifically put in there, is because if a weapon is permanently inoperable, then it would not be able to be used. And so there lies the exception.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To me, if it isn't able to be fired, it's benign. There's no logical reason to have any requirements on that. Second question on the tamper-proof container. I was wondering that too, like what assurances does a consumer, a gun owner have who's just out buying a gun safe at Walmart or online that it's going to comply with your bill?
Senator Gustafson.
Mr. Chair, Senator Cruen, I understand that there are lots of different ways that people could break into a safe. And while, we don't know what all of those things could be, making it tamper-proof, I think establishes a certain line of expectation about whether or not a weapon would be able to be attained. We are specifically focused on unauthorized users. And while it's not just children, it's mostly children. And if it is tamper-proof or tamper-resistant, I think that provides the level of security to keep that firearm away from them and make it inaccessible. If you're looking between the difference between tamper-proof and tamper-resistant, again, that is language that I'd be happy to work with you on. But that is what we're going with now, to make it very clear that we don't want children to access those weapons.
Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate those answers. My perception.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate those answers. They're all
speaking,
fucking moronic.
All the gun owners I know are responsible. And it seems like this law is going to trip up a lot of responsible gun owners and attaches criminal liability to it.
Speaking of kiddos,
without a negligence standard or something, reckless, or just negligence in turning it into strict liability. I think there's the potential for a lot of law-abiding gun owners to be subject to criminal penalties. So that's my overall concern with this. But thank you for answering the questions.
This way.
Any further discussion from members of the committee? Not seeing any. Senator Umover.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to move that Senate File 4312 as amended be recommended to pass and we refer to the Finance Committee.
Senator Umover Baten moves that Senate File 4312
little man is having a
pass be
good time.
referred to the Senate Committee on Finance. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. We have had a lazy day.
Motion
No.
prevails. All right. Next up, members, we're going to take up Senate File 733, Senator Coleman.
Yeah, Matt, 100%.
This is being distributed,
These
members.
people will steal the entire safe.
As Senator Coleman
out of your
approaches,
house
I just
in
want to
no
note
time.
that this bill is technically not in front of this committee. But as a courtesy to Senator Coleman's interest in the topic and advocacy on behalf of this bill, we wanted to get, and at her request, we wanted to give her an opportunity to present her bill in front of the committee today as we're considering gun violence issues, gun violence prevention issues. So Senator Coleman, we appreciate you being here and your patience today as we kind of move through our agenda. We welcome your input and happy to hear what you have to
Constitutional
say.
carry
So
should be
Senate
very
file number
simple.
733.
Your
Senator
state
Coleman.
constitution does
Thank
not
you,
give the
Mr.
government
Chair.
any
Thank goodness
power to
for
regulate
emergency
your carry of
babysitters.
arms, so you can carry on.
Mr. Chair,
It's
Judiciary
true, that's-
Committee members, as you know, we heard this bill almost exactly 1 year ago.
Yes, Sam.
And I genuinely
Yeah,
appreciate that it earned your support.
Doesn't matter what someone
I
kills
said
you with.
yesterday that this
Knife,
issue is
gun,
personal to me, and I don't take lightly
poison,
that having
name
to
it.
return to this committee is relatively unprecedented. I do have my comments from last year, and I'm willing to repeat them, but I know you're very tight on time, as that 5 o'clock deadline is 2 hours and
I don't
17
think
minutes
we
away.
got to her earlier.
My bill
So we'll listen
had
to
bipartisan support a year ago. It had bipartisan support yesterday. And no matter what happens,
remember,
I
we
believe
backed the
increasing
hearing up.
penalties on
This
straw
was all
purchases
today, but we backed
is a good
the hearing up.
idea.
We could-
I hope that a bill to increase
told
penalties on
ourselves
straw
that-
purchases can move independently and with broad consensus, like the bill I have sitting in Finance Committee. Mr. Chair, I'm
then I'm
happy
not
to
just
schedule a
hoping
meeting right
for
after you're done here
Congress
today
law
to work with the
from
House and
your
yourself on
shit.
preferred amendments, and was open to accepting some yesterday on the floor yesterday, and am open to accepting some in the future as well. I'd like to conclude by saying I deeply respect the members on this committee, and I greatly appreciate the time. Again, if you'd like me to read my testimony from last year, I'm happy to. Otherwise, I just appreciate the brief moment here.
Thank you, Senator Coleman. I appreciate your being here. And we do know this was a bipartisan effort last year. I'm hopeful still that
Someone asked a question, I
if a
posted
bill
something.
such as this or similar to it passes this year, that it will also be bipartisan.
Hold on,
And,
I'll
your input is welcome
pause it
in
here
this
for just a
committee.
sec, just like-
And I know it's also welcome to the chief author.
So this is transferring certain firearms to prohibited people. Anyway, the comment I was getting to, it was on John Crump's video, or it was about Chicago suing Glock. Of course, it's going to freaking play when I don't want it to. And I made the comment on Crump's video that it's all about just bleeding the gun companies dry. And someone asked me, well, PLACA, how do they get around PLACA, the Protection for Legal Commerce and Arms? Well, simple. They're doing the same thing they did in Sandy Hook. They're going after the advertising, saying that these companies are, and I haven't read the Glock lawsuit yet, so don't quote me on it, but it's probably going to be in the same vein, that these the advertisements are driving the crime. The advertisements are causing this false demand for these military style weapons, and they're driving the crime. The advertising, instead of just going after the firearm itself. So they're getting around PLACA that way. That's the way they went after Remington with Sandy Hook. They went after the advertising. And make no mistake, either way, these assholes win. They either bleed the gun company dry, or they actually win the suit itself. Because the company will just, well, Remington ended up settling. Their insurance company ended up settling. So these anti-gun groups get millions and millions of dollars off this. The company itself spends millions and millions of dollars defending themselves, and they're just tying shit up, driving up the cost for guns because that company has to recoup that cost somehow. It's ridiculous. But it's lawfare. It's the same thing the left's been doing forever. It's the same thing that PLACA was supposed to prevent, but not so much. One in 5 children alcohol, yeah. Dude, we've been over the statistics on the channel before, where we can look at innocent children. We went to from newborn to 18 years old, unintentional firearms deaths. In the entire United States, I don't think they've hit over 140 in a year. That's a huge number. But not when you actually compare it to, one, the population of the United States, which is probably, when you factor in illegals, somewhere around 400 and something million right now. And then when you factor in the amount of kids killed by other things, drowning in the home is more than unintentional firearms deaths. Now, that unintentional firearms deaths is not just a child picking up a gun and shooting themselves, shooting their sibling, anything like that. That includes drive-bys. That includes adults having negligent discharges. There's a lot of stuff that works into it. Your child, if you have firearms in a home and you have cleaning chemicals in your home, your child is more likely to be injured by your cleaning chemicals than by your firearms. And it is magnitudes more by the chemicals than by the firearms. But we don't deal with people who are intellectually honest about their arguments. That's why it's constantly emotion. Constantly emotion. 19 treated in emergency departments. 2 children died as a result of being poisoned. CDC. Yes. Bob out here spitting facts, baby. And like I said, we've been over those statistics and stuff on the channel before. So it's not even close when we're talking about innocent children harmed by a firearm and innocent children harmed by car accidents or by chemicals in the home. It's nowhere. It's not even close. If you wanted to save more innocent lives, like my son who just walked in here, there would be bills to completely lock up, chain up, do whatever for normal household chemicals. If you wanted to save more innocent lives, those bills would be coming through. But no, we're hearing more bills about firearms because, well, hey, they're the sexy thing that the left wants to go after. And if they put enough infringements in there, then people won't be armed. And guess what? Then the government can do whatever the fuck they want to do. Now, the funny thing's going to be, and God, I hope I live long enough. If it does happen, I hope I live long enough. And I might be injured by the time I get there. Where I'm standing on that train and there's some leftist looking at me going, well, gee, how did we get to this point where the government could load us on trains? And I'm going to punch that motherfucker dead in the face and be like, you. That's how we got here. You. Yeah, my son's in the other room, so I could cuss. This is going to be a whole lot of these useful idiots that are going to be really surprised when they're the ones getting on the trains. But we were allies. Yeah, you were allies, all right. You were useful idiots. And useful idiots are only useful as long as they're useful. And then when you're not useful, you get the same treatment as everybody else. Face first against a wall, shot in the back of the head, or put into gas chambers. History's a bitch, kids.
Of other bills that are same or similar to this. So thank you. Any questions at this time for Senator Coleman? All right. Thank you so much, Senator Coleman.
I'm amazed my YouTube channel has lasted this long.
All right. We're going to take up Senate File 5153. Senator Gustafson. Members, this will be distributed.
Senator Gustafson, thanks for stepping on everybody's rights yet again. We're doing shit that will only criminalize legal activity. Yeah. The green stickers with the smiley face with the tongue sticking out, usually have the messed up eyes. That's one you're talking about? If those are the ones you're talking about, Matt? Yes, I remember. A lot of those were distributed and then had the Poison Control Center numbers too. And don't quote me on it, but I think there was a Sour Patch Kid that kind of had that same theme. Do you not know who Sour Patch Kids are?
All right, Senator Gustafson, Senate File 5153 is before this committee. This is the first committee stop for this bill, and there is 1, 2, 3 amendments. 3 amendments before us. There's an A1, an A2, and an A4. So let me just ask, because we could incorporate them into one amendment. Senator Gustafson, the A1 is a delete everything. The others are drafted to the delete everything. Did you intend to apply A2 and the A4?
Mr. Chair, just A1 and A2.
Okay, so members, you can set aside the A4 amendment.
Yeah, Garbage Pail Kids. That was the other one. Matter of fact, I think Gartersville kids may have been the one I was thinking about. Bob,
Senator
you got me on track.
Pappas, would you be willing to move? You could incorporate
Yeah, it
the
was
A2
Gartersville kids.
amendment into the A1 amendment, which you are allowed to do procedurally, and then move the author's amendment, the A1.
Oh, man.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion prevails.
I got a
The
story
amendment is
about that
adopted.
if I remember to tell it.
Senator Gustafson, to your bill.
Thank you, Chair Latz and committee members. The bill before you today is an updated and better drafted version of the previous bills. In light of recent events, we worked with stakeholders to make sure the bill would be effective and do what we wanted to do: save lives, make our communities safer. It was our intention to address this issue this year as a more comprehensive public safety policy review. A straw purchase occurs when an individual legally purchases an item such as a firearm on behalf of another person who is legally prohibited from purchasing it themselves or who wishes to remain anonymous. While the purchaser may have a clean record and be legally allowed to buy the item, they are essentially acting as a middleman or straw for someone else. In the context of firearms, a typical scenario involves a person with a clean criminal record purchasing a gun from a licensed dealer on behalf of someone who cannot legally obtain one due to factors such as a criminal record, mental illness, or being underage. The true intended recipient of the firearm may have a disqualifying background that would prevent them from passing that required background check. They are a common method used by individuals seeking to obtain firearms for illicit purposes, such as committing crimes or acts of violence. The tragic and violent incident in Burnsville is another reminder of why this issue is urgent. The preliminary investigation that led to the indictment states the assailant had lost his gun rights in 2007 after being convicted of a felony assault. There were multiple guns in the home. The weapons were used against the first responders, should not have been in the possession of the assailant. One gun was equipped with a binary trigger that was, as the indictment states, fires one shot when the trigger is pulled and another when the trigger is released, effectively doubling the rate of fire. As we have learned, the use of a trigger essentially creates an automatic weapon, which does not allow for any type of defense to be mounted. While straw purchases are already illegal under Minnesota law, our law contains loopholes that need to be closed in order to hold offenders accountable. Our bill, as amended, does the following: expands current crime to include the transfer of all firearms to an ineligible person, not only the transfer of a pistol or SAMSA. The amends the mental status required to prove that a crime in included cases where the person making the transfer should have known that the person receiving the firearm was ineligible to receive the firearm. It creates an exception for the transfer of firearms other than a pistol to a minor if that person is ineligible to receive that type of firearm. The bill increases the penalty for a transfer to an ineligible person from a gross misdemeanor to a felony with a maximum sentence of 2 years and increases the maximum fine for an aggravated violation from $10,000 to $20,000. The bill also increases the penalty for a transfer to an ineligible person from a gross misdemeanor to a felony with a maximum penalty of 5 years and a fine of up to $20,000. Under current law, firearms cannot include a trigger activator. A trigger activator can be a device attached to a firearm that allows the rate of fire to increase to that of a machine gun, or a device that allows a semi-automatic firearm to shoot more than one shot, either one, with a single pull of a trigger, or two, by harnessing the energy of the firearm to continue firing without additional physical manipulation of the trigger. This bill clarifies that a trigger activator includes a device that allows a semi-automatic firearm.
Oh, man. Oh, pain. Pain. So understand what she's doing. She's taking a bill that is going to throw liability on you for selling a firearm to somebody. And it turns out that they're prohibited. You didn't think they were, you sold the firearm, doesn't matter. You're going to be liable for that. And they're adding in things like binary triggers, trigger cranks. This would cover bump stocks into a bill about transferring firearms to an ineligible person. And again, I will guarantee you this bill was written by either Brady or Everytown or someone like that. And it proves how ignorant these people are of firearms technology, how firearms actually operate. So again, it will make binary triggers illegal. I guarantee you it's going to make, say you just have a trigger job done, would make your gun illegal. bump stocks, trigger cranks, all that. But yet I can go get a Gatling gun with no extra paperwork. It's a simple FFL background check, NICS background check. Don't tell this lady that. No one informed this lady that. Please, God, no, don't do it.
To shoot more than one with a single pull and release of the trigger. We have experts from BCS and DPS here to explain technical.
So get that. Get what you just said. So it would be illegal if it allowed more than one shot with a single pull and release of the trigger. Federally, it is a single function of the trigger. So they're throwing another little gem in there. You can't stop a fucking tyrant. You can't. Tar and feathers should be a thing. It really should. It really, really, really needs to be a thing. And she should be tarred, and I don't give a shit what color feathers you put on her. Pink, purple, blue, dye them however you want. She should be tarred, feathered, and thrown out of office.
Pieces of the bill if necessary. This bill is one more step we can take, in addition to other actions taken by this committee, to keep our families and law enforcement safe from gun violence. Gun violence recurs a multifaceted response. This bill closes loopholes in current laws in order to hold offenders accountable. Every day, more than 120 people in the United States are killed with guns. Twice as many are shot and wounded, and countless others are impacted by acts of gun violence. Keeping guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them is the goal of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gustafson. Do you have any specific testifiers?
Oh, the retards that vote for these people.
Like to bring forward to testify in connection with this bill?
Mr. Chair, I have no testifiers, but again, do have BCA and DPS on standby if needed for technical questions. If it's all right with you, Mr. Chair, just bring them to the table now.
Well, let's see if there are any technical questions that they need to come forward for. We do have signed up Nephi Cole, who was online, signed up to testify.
Yeah, Bob,
on this bill as well.
What,
Mr. Cole, are you still there?
Guns and Gadgets. Jared started a shirt like that.
I am, Mr.
No
Chair.
poking at Jared, but I've been saying that.
My name is Nephi Cole. I'm NEPHI-COLE. I'm the Director of Government Relations and State Affairs for the National Shooting Sports Foundation, which is the Firearms Trade Association of America. We represent everybody that makes, moves, sells firearms, ammunition, and components in the United States of America. Has some significant concerns about this bill. In particular,
but yes, anybody who's got the change,
we're concerned about what is meant by the definition of firing without by the trigger components of this bill. If the intention of the sponsor is to
Jared
is related to triggers that would make a semi-automatic firearm into a fully automatic firearm, we believe those are prohibited by federal law. We're certain they are, and as well as likely state laws in the state of Minnesota. The concern that we have is that there are triggers such as binary triggers that a single function of the trigger, for example, if you pull the trigger, the gun goes off once.
Yeah, Bob, I
and
feel
the
that.
same type of trigger, if you operate the trigger in the opposite direction, a single action,
I'm gonna have to wait till
the gun goes off a second time. That's two actions of the trigger. It's a pull and a release. Each one is a separate action, and under federal law, that would not be considered illegal or machine gun. Those would be two separate actions under federal law. Our concern is that the way this bill is written, it would make it a significant criminal offense to be in possession of what are already lawful under federal law, and they're not going to be outlawed under federal law, lawful triggers.
Give the ATF
if that is the case, we have great concerns about the purchase of these triggers, the ownership. You're going to have people who are going to come from out of state who legally own these things. You can buy them legally. They're not restricted. They are common triggers. So our concern is does this bill criminalize lawful common triggers in the state of Minnesota and create a very punitive situation for somebody that owns that? We believe that is the case in the bill, and would encourage you to revisit that and remove that provision at amendment. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony, Mr. Cole. I don't have anyone else who's signed up to testify, so let me just ask the room, is there anyone else in the room that wishes to testify in connection with this bill? I see two people. This gentleman hasn't testified yet before, and then Mr. Gosh, but I'm going to ask you to keep your testimony down to 2 minutes or less.
Don't
Sir,
do it. Don't jump.
Go ahead and identify yourself for the record.
Hello, Chair Latz, members of the committee. My name is Jess Pallian. I am the Policy Program Manager at Violence Free Minnesota, the Coalition Against Relationship Abuse. I'm not really here to testify in support or opposition to this bill, but rather to give a little bit extra context for how coercion occurs in domestic violence relationships and how that can interact with this bill. Coercion in a domestic violence relationship oftentimes does not meet the ways that we think about it in a legal defense.
$10. He's never been in a
scenario. For example, coercion isn't always somebody being threatened directly by their partner, but they might be their children being threatened by their partner.
Bob, don't even go there. Nope, no bugging.
Threats of calling their employer to sabotage their professional relationships. It could be their pets. It could be any mixture of things that help the abuser maintain power and control over the person who is suffering the harm. And so when you're looking at making law like this, and it is not entirely uncommon that somebody is asked to buy a weapon for their prohibited abuser, when they're essentially.
Okay, let me do this, and I'll give everybody a warning. And I normally don't do this. If you have adverse reactions to crude language and bad jokes, close your ears. On the count of 3. 1, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi. I guarantee you, for a fact, if they made cock-flavored bubble gum, he would blow bubbles. Back to our regularly scheduled programming.
When you're making law like this, we just want to make sure that we're keeping on front of mind that coercion is an issue that is going to arise if this law passes, and that we want to try and get out in front of that to make sure that victims and survivors of domestic violence are being as protected as they can within the realm of.
I was going to say he got passed up a lot.
I want to also thank this committee just for taking gun violence seriously. Every year, Violence Free Minnesota puts out a report on the people who we lost in the past year to intimate partner homicide. And every year, the main instrumentality of death for those people who we lost is guns. So I want to just express concern that coercion can have and how we can expand that definition. But I also want to express gratitude for taking this issue seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Gosh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the Senate Judiciary. Again, my name is Brian Gosh, lawyer and registered lobbyist of the National Rifle Association. Want to talk.
And here's another point with that. So if the government doesn't want me to transfer a firearm to a prohibited possessor, why not make it very simple where I could pull an app up on my phone, type in the person's name, I can look at their ID. Okay, here's your ID. Type in their name, type in their driver's license information, anything else I've got, hit go, and it tells me an either a proceed or deny. Doesn't have to give me all their information. Doesn't have to give me what. Just proceed or deny. And I could pull their information. I could look at it and go, oh, shit, dude, you're popping up on the app. I can't transfer. So I'm not going to transfer this firearm. Why not make it that simple if this is about public safety and not allowing people prohibited possessors to get firearms? Agorizer, my brother, what's happening? And yes, I would be saying that his domestic abuser is not a woman. Not in the sense that we know what women are. Maybe in the sense of what he thinks a woman is. Yeah, something like that. And yes, Sam, I truly believe that prohibited possessor laws are completely unconstitutional. I've said it plenty of times on the stream. If you are safe enough to be out on the street, you should be able to have a firearm. Period. End of story. As long as you are not using that firearm to violently deprive someone else of life, liberty, or property, the government shouldn't even be involved. What I am saying, though, is if this was about public safety, if this was about stopping prohibited possessors from getting firearms, they'd make it that easy. But it's not about that. Matter of fact, if it was about making it so easy to prevent prohibited possessors from getting firearms, why, with all the tax money that the state, federal, local, and all them steal from us, why don't they finance the background checks themselves? Instead of, in some cases, it costing $100 per background check, and a person has to pay for a background check for every single firearm transfer. This is all about control. It has jack shit to do about safety. Yep, Sam, 100, yep. Boom, right there.
About the language here in the bill. Originally, we were neutral on it with the amendment, the language of a single pull and release of the trigger. I want to talk about the commonly used pistol called the Glock. Many in law enforcement use it. They are fixed with automatic reset triggers. You don't need a full release before you can pull that trigger again to fire another round. With this language, it could be problematic, and you might potentially be banning the use of a very common firearm in Minnesota. So I just want to throw that out there for your consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gosh. All right. Any discussion from members of the committee or questions?
I'll just say, Mr. Chair.
Senator
Just make a
Eichhorn.
comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just say that the two bills that we heard Senator Coleman's and yours are oddly similar, word for word. And I
got to pause this before I get to, or let him go on. Let me do this. So, talking about triggers, trigger resets, what they're getting into. Let me pull it off screen, clear it. Nothing in the chamber. So, one of the issues that they talk about with a forced reset trigger is the trigger was resetting with very little travel. So trigger goes, resets, okay, pow, trigger comes forward, resets. How long before we see bills from these jackasses, because these assholes do learn, before they say your trigger has to have a certain amount of travel before it resets? And if it doesn't travel a quarter inch before it resets, that's an illegal trigger. If that sounds stupid, it is. But realize, like New York, to have a compliant trigger in New York, it had to be like a 10-pound trigger. So how long before we see, again, YouTube, this is a fucking frame, you idiots. How long before we see laws that have to do with the amount of travel that the trigger has to reset? That was just an interesting thought that just slapped me in the back of the head. So take that with whatever you want.
I truly think, had we been hearing the same bill, I see there were no spots left on hers, and maybe that's why you originally cloned it. You probably would have had some bipartisan support, but it's really hard for members of the public to follow something that turns into what I would consider some extreme partisanship, and hard to follow for the general public when you get these last minute amendments to completely change it. And unfortunately, in its current form, I don't think you have anybody.
This was pretty close to my first ever build. Matter of fact, this is the slide and barrel off my first build for a Apollo rating. Now, my first gun build was an actual AK. But this is the slide and barrel. It's a true precision slide barrel. This has a Swamp Fox. I can't even remember the what type of Swamp Fox it is. I don't know. I beat the shit out of this thing, and it runs like a freaking dream. Joe Vibe, my brother, what's happening? What you know good, man? So, anyway. But yeah, that's just a standard polymer 80. I can't even remember which mag well I've got on this one. You can see where I had to clean up the inside of it so it would engage with a mag. Had to tune some stuff up. I still haven't figured out whether I'm going to do a Cerakote job on that one or not. But yeah, let's get back to Minnesota, because good God. And then I'm just going to throw a link out here and we can shoot the shit till the wife threatens me where I have to take my ball and go home.
Bipartisan support, which is really unfortunate.
She hasn't
because I
called
think
me.
this is something we probably could have had some agreement on with folks. Even heard Mr. Ghosh say they would have been neutral. I think he probably would have had a 67-0 vote on the original bill. So it's really unfortunate that we got to go down this path. I wish Senator Coleman would have been consulted a little bit more. That's unfortunate as well. In this era we're in, everybody's calling for bipartisanship, and there's not even a threat of that in here. So I'm just frustrated more than anything. And unfortunately, I'm going to be completely against the bill now as well. When I initially, I was excited about the opportunity to support the work you two I thought we're maybe doing together, but I guess that's not the case.
Mr. Chair?
Senator Gustafson.
Senator Eichhorn, I appreciate your comments. I just want to make sure I understand too. You're saying that you supported this bill until it became a DFL bill, and now you're against this bill.
Mr. Chair, this is two completely different
Senator
bills.
Eichhorn, the proper way for this committee to work is for you to be recognized by the chair before you make your statement. So,
Mr. Chair,
Eichhorn.
two completely different bills.
Yeah,
Originally,
Bob.
we had the same thing. What you presented us
I'll
now
say
after
this,
your
Bob.
amendments is not even remotely the same. It would have been helpful.
I'll say this for the guy. We watched some other hearings out of Minnesota. It's been, hell, it might have been a couple of months ago. And the dude from the NRA was testifying pretty good against these bills that they were putting through. And I can't remember which bills those were offhand. There's been so many freaking gun control bills that we've covered in the last little while. I can't remember which ones they were. But I will say this. He did testify very competently against these bills. Now, again, you still have to factor in my issues with the NRA and Wayne LaPierre's suits and the fact that they could have been doing a ton more with the proceeds from their members. So I have no love for the NRA whatsoever. But I will kind of defend him because I've seen him in at least 2 hearings now, maybe 3. And he has done decently well. It's done perfect? No. Has he done well? I'll give him a C+, maybe a B, depending on the hearing.
Probably for the general public.
I would get an F
had you dropped a bill as what all your amendments are. What you have is not the same.
So there's
Senator Eichhorn, it seems to me that there's been a lot of work has been done in the last year between and among all the stakeholders. So it's unfortunate that this is turning into a partisan.
I think we got here. Didn't we get here when we first started?
There's a lot more in common on these bills than not.
I think we did.
So, and I'll note, I think before Senator Coleman, Senator Pratt.
So we're opening up the floor, kids. Anybody jump in
Pratt,
who wants to jump in, let's shoot the breeze. Doesn't even have to be about guns.
Similar provisions, and I carried the original bill, which was a gross
Jump
misdemeanor
in.
penalty, which is the basis for the law that's being amended now. So
at the start of this stream, and just damn. Oh, if any of you guys listen to the stream about the ATF warrant where the dude in Arkansas got shot in the head, we did about 2.5 hours on that earlier today and read through that whole warrant. If it wasn't raining, I'd have been fishing tonight. That's where I wanted to be. But we got done with that stream. Finally closed the stream out about the ATF warrant and raid and all that shit. And open up my YouTube and I follow God knows how many. Look, there's the wife. But Sam, hold the fort down for a minute. I got to assuage
no problem. Hello, everybody.
And I said we'd hang out till you got home. So I don't know. We had pizza last night.
Anyway, so hello everybody. I just came on basically to reaffirm what I said there on the screen. These people are really just trying to disarm us because they want to do something that we would rightfully have to shoot them for. So, anyways, I have a pretty big gripe with my home state. We've got this ridiculous situation where you got to go and you got to get background checks for everything from ammunition to parts anymore. Hell, I could barely even get parts. I've been collecting the parts to build my own rifle for quite a while, and it's getting harder and harder to find them. I need trunnion sets, and those are just impossible to get a hold of anymore. They should be able to just order those on the internet, but can't really get parts around here anymore. Like I said, government tends to overreach too much. But we got laws like the Bruin decision and constitutional carry, and people will say, "Oh well, hey, it's just the government. It reaffirms and protects people's rights." How though? Because here's how I see it: those laws are government asserting authority over, areas of our lives they have no business asserting authority in. Okay, for example. If a random person who works for the government comes to your house and says, "Oh, you're not allowed to paint your houses, I don't know, blue inside," you're going to be like, "Well, fuck off. You can't tell me that, right?" But then if the government then comes along and says, "You can definitely paint your house as blue inside," right? Well, it has no bearing on whether or not you have the freedom to paint your house blue inside, does it? So if they don't have the authority... Hey, what's up? Sorry, I was just trying to kind of keep things going.
You are 100% spot on with it, man.
But yeah, the people don't see, these normies don't see, especially these big gun tubers, that when the government comes along and says, "Well, this action is so constitutional, you don't even need permission to do it." I'm like, well, the Constitution already says that, so the only purpose this can serve is for the precedent to be set that government has authority to give or revoke permission for these things. If they don't have permission to revoke it, they don't have permission to permit it. You know what I mean?
Well, see, here's the thing: these big gun tubers, a lot of them do see it, but they don't want to jump into that arena because they don't want to jump down that rabbit hole. They don't want to piss off all these fans who are just there for entertainment and aren't there for actual education. And that's a huge thing with a lot of really big gun tubers. So trying to get my headphones connected back, but Demolition Matt. So Demolition Matt, I follow this channel forever. I love his channel. He seems like a good dude. But is Demolition Matt, Demolition Ranch out there, is he banging the table, calling out these gun laws and these politicians? No, he's not. Should he be? Yeah, he should. How many millions of followers does that cat have these days?
Yeah. I've often wondered why he does, because listen, you know what? I love Demolition Ranch. I do. I love what he does, dude. I like doing stuff like that too. I've got shit that I'll take up into the woods just to destroy with a gun. Sometimes it's fun to do that kind of thing. So I like to watch him and stuff. But I agree with you. Guys like him are the ones who ought to be banging the table. But one of the biggest problems we have in this country is that whenever you precede the term gun owner with law abiding, what you're indicating to the people who run this country, the people who own it now, is that Your rights are contingent on whether or not you are obedient to their edicts.
Well, see, and
it's just that simple.
Who was it said, Matt, can you blame him? He's got a lot. You got a lot to lose. Yes, I can blame him. Now, Matt started out his channel because Matt is an actual veterinarian, and a lot of the stuff he started out with in Demo Ranch, a lot of people don't realize, is he was funding doing free work for animals off of his channel. That's one of the ways that his stuff actually got started. Now, yeah, 11.5 million subscribers. Sam posted in chat. So can I blame Matt for not actually standing up and calling this shit out? Yes, I can. Because what's going to happen is, and I know he thinks he's safe in Texas, but when this shit rolls through Minnesota, when it rolls through North Carolina, when it rolls through Tennessee, which it's got no chance in Tennessee right now, but when it keeps rolling through like that, well, guess what? Eventually, he's going to be down to a slingshot shooting paper fucking plates. He's not going to have the 50 cal. He's not going to have the machine.
And Texas is already being overrun by Californian voters, too.
Mm-hmm.
I keep hearing people say it all the time. Leave your politics with you. So, folks, if you think you're safe in Texas, you're wrong. You're already being overrun, and it's by design.
Yeah, you are not safe just in Texas. That's the reason, we've got these bills in Alabama right now. The assault weapons bill that they've got in, I'd have to look up her name, whoever she is, her sponsors. They're absolute leftists. The only reason I call those out now is because it may not pass this year. It may not pass next year, but they just keep submitting that bill. And as they see the voter base in Alabama turn over, they'll pass it. There were plenty of people before the 1934 NFA that they weren't as plugged in as we are these days, but there were plenty of people that were like, no, our government could never do that. And here we are since 1934 till now, looking at this retarded ass law that we've had to deal with forever. And then it got worse in 86 with the actual, the Hughes Amendment, and then the ban on new manufacture of machine guns. And then they just keep stacking on.
Well, a lot of people don't know this, but on that point of the 1934 thing, a lot of people will be like, well, that's the start. And I was one of them for a long time. Well, that's where it all started. Well, I would assert that it started way back, not too long after, I don't know the exact year off the top of my head, but not too long after the Constitution itself was written, when in certain towns and municipalities were dictating to people how they stored their arms and powder, which at the time it was basically a fire code, not a gun control measure, but it had to do with our armaments. And I would say that while it might seem practical, it was what really kicked it all off.
Well, here's the thing, because I've gone over it on the channel before. One of them was the 1783 Mass Act, the Act of Massachusetts, and it was fire code. It was basically about how you stored your powder, and if you stored your cannons and swivel cannons and your powder horns in a place where they were in danger of catching fire because everything was built out of wood and they were afraid of the place burning down. But even if you go back to the 1783 Mass Act, how it worked was, and I've talked about the text plenty of times. So there were fire wards that went around the neighborhoods looking for, in the cities, looking for basically dangers of fire. And if they saw you were storing your cannon or your swivel cannon or your mortar or your grenades or your explosive shells with powder actually in them in an unsafe way, they couldn't just take your stuff. They had to bring you in front of a jury. The jury had to say, okay, they all had to agree, okay, he's not storing his stuff in a safe way. And then the government could confiscate them. But when the government confiscated them, the government didn't keep them. They sold them right back to the public at public auction. So it was never about banning people from owning guns. It was never about banning people from owning cannons, and it lists them out: cannons, swivel cannons, mortars, all that stuff. It was never about the people being stopped from owning those arms. It was basically a liability standard. It was.
But then the person who had the improperly stored arms were not then barred from.
No, they weren't barred from owning arms. They could, matter of fact, they could buy their shit right back at public auction. It was basically a fine for causing a liability issue with the entire city that you lived in, is what it came down to.
Don't necessarily agree with that, but I do still think it was laws like that, you know.
Well, there's some of it that absolutely led to that, that got us to here. But see, and that's one thing, the 1783 Mass Act and laws like that get mentioned in a lot of gun control briefs in California and other states. And I don't see why the hell the so-called pro 2A lawyers don't hammer that and go, wait a second. This wasn't a ban on people owning these arms. They owned all the arms that the government could possibly own. This was simply basically a civil charge, because it wasn't a criminal penalty. It was a civil charge for storing them in a way that caused undue harm to others. And even if the guns were confiscated, one, you had to go to a jury, and two, they were sold right back to the public. So it was never a public ban. Ever.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like, you know, these prohibited persons laws or, you know, clear and definable need laws like New York. Did you hear about that? My home state. I'm from New York State. These faggots, you got to have a clear and definable need. Yes, unfortunately.
You're still in New York.
Yes, but I'm only. I mean, I could uproot and leave any time, but I don't believe in ceding territory to tyrants. It's hard to live here, but all my family and the family that's not is just below me down the border, you know, to PA. Yeah. And all my kids are here. Like, everything is here. I'm not leaving.
Look,
I would rather stay and fight to liberate it too.
PA's headed in the same direction. Mike McLean posted some stuff earlier today, which is going to happen next week. There's a couple of hearings that are going to happen in PA about an assault weapons ban and another safe storage bill and something else next week. So we're going to cover those next week. As soon as I can find them, we're going to cover them. Because PA's going.
By the way, I like your channel, man. I've been kind of ghost watching you for a couple of weeks now. I found you at the end of last month, and I've been kind of ghost watching you. I just wanted to come on and let you know that I appreciate what you're doing, dude.
Well, all I got to say is,
I've been preaching a lot of this myself too. So,
you know, God forgive your soul. If you follow me, you're probably going to hell with gasoline pants on. So, I mean, there is that. Get a good priest, and you know. But yeah, it's man.
I just don't believe that any human has the right to dictate in what way that other humans can arm themselves, especially when you're utilizing the same armaments that you're denying to the masses in order to enforce these unconstitutional and just downright naturally wrong edicts.
Yes, absolutely. And and
did y'all hear what he said earlier, folks? Sorry, I just wanted the grenade thing. We're not meant to be restricted from owning things like grenades. Like, by all means, if you can afford to go buy a fucking Abrams A1, I salute you, sir. Go ahead and do it. And if you need a crew, give me a call. I'll help out. You know what I'm saying? Our founders owned battleships, for fuck's sake.
Dude, yeah.
Cannons, which is artillery for the day.
Yeah, you had privateers. I mean, normal towns back in the day would all chip in the citizens, and they would buy cannons for the town. And about the only restriction you had on that for a private citizen owning a cannon is maybe some noise laws that said, hey, maybe 12 o'clock at night ain't the perfect time to fire that. But it wasn't a criminal code.
It was like a more of a town municipalities kind of bylaw would just be courteous to your neighbors type shit. I get that. I have no qualms with that. That's reasonable. You know, if you want to fire your cannons at midnight, go out into the wilderness. You know, if you don't have that fucking capacity, wait till daytime. I get it. I mean, that's just kind of common courtesy shit. But You know, we got like up here in New York, man, it's horrible. I've been trying to collect the parts to rebuild an old rifle I used to have. I'm trying to exactly duplicate it because I loved it. I'm 100% an AK guy, but
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
you know, it's impossible to even get a hold of parts like front and rear trunnions. I can't
Dude,
get a fixed stock trunnion. That's impossible. And a properly chambered or sized, I should say, front trunnion and a properly chambered barrel, forget about it.
I'll tell you what, hold on. Let me check something in just a second, and I might be able to hook a cracker up. Let's see. This was the 1783 Mass Act, right? So this goes through the fire ward stuff. And the reason I hit on this all the time. So this was kind of the presentation of the law being enacted by the Senate, House of Representatives, yada yada. That if any person shall take into a dwelling house, stable, barn, outhouse, warehouse, store, shop, or building within the town of Boston, because it was only in the town of Boston, any cannon, mortar, and this is where it gets good because you realize people owned cannons, swivel cannon. When they say swivel, they mean a swivel cannon, which was a small cannon that was kind of on a gimbal.
Think about the old days equivalent to a vehicle mounted MG turret.
Yes, absolutely. So swivel, mortar, howitzer, or cow horn or firearm loaded with or having, powder basically in those dwellings. And this is all about fire code within the said town. Any bomb, grenade, or other iron shell, meaning explosive shells, having gunpowder in the same, such person shall forfeit and pay the sum of 10 pounds to be recovered at the suit of the fire wards of the town, and in action of debt. But here's where it gets good, because that just proves that people owned all these weapons. That's all that does.
Said howitzer.
All those weapons.
That's anti-enemy armor type fucking artillery, just to be clear.
So then they get back into it, further enacted, foresaid, and then they go back into it. Swivel cannons, mortars, howitzers, cow horns, bombs, grenades, iron shells of any kind. And those are explosive shells is what they're talking about right there. And then they go through the different buildings. Upon complaint made by said fire wards to the Court of Common Pleas, such cannons, swivel cannons, mortars, howitzers being so found, the court shall proceed to try the merits of such complaint by a jury. So you had to go to a jury. And if the jury shall find such complaint supported, such cannon, swivel cannon, mortar, howitzer shall be adjudged forfeit and sold at public auction. So it went right back to the public, and you could literally buy your own stuff back.
Yep.
So it was never.
I don't necessarily.
Well, I don't necessarily agree with the law itself, but what it does prove, it proves two things. One, that people owned all these weapons at the time of the founding and after the time of the founding. And it proves that it was never a prohibition on ownership because everything was sold right back to the public.
Correct.
So
I mean, the part I disagree with necessarily is just the outright confiscation and resale part. I mean, at least leave some sort of recourse in between for correction of action. See, that's where we got to start to like reel in the law, is the law's ability to just come and fucking take shit from people. You know what I mean? Sorry, didn't mean to, excuse my language, but just to, take people stuff.
If you have watched my channel long, brother, you know the language doesn't bother me at all because I'm going to use plenty fucking of it. There's no way I can do it. There's no way I can watch all this stuff or read documents
and not swear
without swearing. There's no way.
Yeah.
If you ever,
I have a tendency to get really overt.
Yeah. If you ever see me do it, I am under duress. I've been kidnapped. Starting, putting me on milk cartons and shit, and letting everybody know Coop's missing because
got took up. Yeah.
There's times where I limit it, but not really. I mean, if my kid's in the room with me, I limit some of it. But no, there's no way you can go through this without using adult language. Sorry.
I agree. Because this shit is just it's annoying. It's irritating. And what really gets me is the masses. Like, you know what? I'll go on Langley Outdoors Academy. No, what's it? With Legally Armed America.
Yeah.
Every time I go on his channel and I'm saying shit like this, I think it's hilarious at this point. They just, you must be a Fed. Well, why are you so scared of dudes with badges? Thugs with badges. What's the difference between a Blood or a Crip or a Latin King and any government law enforcement agency? The only real difference is the endorsement. You see, both their paychecks come from the state. They both strong arm and commit thuggery in the streets for a living. But the difference is the police are state endorsed. It's not so true now, but the everyday thugs didn't used to be. Now they kind of are.
Well, I've said it plenty of times. Our government is the most successful crime family in history. Because when they want to commit a crime, they just pass a bill. Yeah. And they make their crimes legal.
Yep. And I've often said the mafia was not destroyed by the government, but the government was absorbed by the mafia way back in the day. They're using the same tactics. They're using the same principles. They're using the same fucking leverage.
Was the mafia absorbed by the government, or did the government absorb the mafia? Because our government
that's
was
actually a
pretty
good
well
question.
Mafia from the start.
Yeah, that's true.
And the reason I kind of put it that way is because before the ink on the Constitution was dry, our founders, like them, love them, were already breaking their own Constitution. They disarmed slaves. They went in with the whiskey rebellions, all that.
Yes.
And that's stuff like that's never taught.
Yep.
You know, when you go back and you actually listen to a true historian talk about stuff, and then you see what happened, it's like, holy shit. Now, it also doesn't mean those rights mean anything less just because our founders were really shitty at putting them, into practice. What it means is
they were still men, which means they were flawed.
Yes. And what we need to do to fix things is to get back to the documents and get away from this freaking man ruling shit.
I see one of the biggest problems as I see it, one of the biggest problems in our society is that at some point the norm shifted from, men in general being anti-authoritarian against outside rule of their house and their behavior to you hear these guys talk about law. And don't get me wrong, look, by our founder, and I hate using this analogy because I don't actually think our founders were law-abiding citizens, because I often say if our founding fathers were law-abiding citizens, we wouldn't have a country. They were criminals according to the British Crown. They were terrorists, insurgents, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we as people, everyday men, must understand that we're not actually evil on the merit that we want a better future for our country, and that we don't want totalitarian control to eke out all semblance of freedom from our nation. We need to start getting okay with the lunatics and the evil people saying that we're terrorists, because guess what? Do you know what that means? That's an open admission to saying that they're afraid of us. That should tell you right there that if we stood up together, we can make effectual change. They fear us together. They fear what we can do if we stand up and say enough is enough. Why do you think they're dividing us on such a fundamental level? Trump isn't our 100%. Savior. He's one of the same fucking guys. All he did was come in, rile up the country, and shit all over the place, and then fuck off, basically. He exposed the opposition to the agenda, and he showed who's going to stand up and say enough is enough with this wokeism shit. And then on the other side, he's no better. We got to stop being politically divided, most of all.
Well, we got to get back to.
Go ahead.
No, dude, you're fine. But no, what we got to get back to is everybody agreeing on a simple principle, which is freedom. Which I say it all the time. As long as I'm not wrongfully depriving others of life, liberty, or property, then the government shouldn't even be involved in it. And if everybody could kind of dial back and get to that point where they didn't expect the government to fix their damn issues, this country would change overnight. It's the fact that we have so many uninformed NPCs on this planet that actually have voting power in the United States that constantly vote for these dickheads and never pay attention to what the end result from that vote is. And then they just continue the cycle. That's why we're screwed, basically. I mean, it's
Well, they get these ideas that more government is the problem is the solution to too much government, right? And they'll say like, because you hit the nail on the head with,
I'll be right back.
Oh shit! Now I lost my train of thought.
We'll get back to it. I'll be right back.
Yeah, you said Now I lost my train of thought. That happens to me sometimes. But it's when you delegate your responsibility. See, the only difference between a country that has a free people who can make their own decisions, who can live their own lives, who don't need permission from a government to just go the hell ahead and do whatever. Like, take driving, for instance. If you're a truck driver and you're driving for profit, then I could see the need for licensing because, number one, sometimes as a truck driver, you gotta transport possibly hazardous, dangerous material, and it's important to make sure that your transportation experts your transportation workers, I'll say, employees, because just because you work there don't mean you're necessarily an expert, are properly able to handle the rig, okay? And now I've spent some time paying attention to what's really going on now, okay? And what it really boils down to is things like driver's licenses and housing taxes and around here, if you want to get some shit done on you want to build a shed, you got to go get permission from your local government. Like, if it's my fucking property, why do I got to pay you to own it? Why do I got to get permission to build a fucking sugar shack so I can make maple syrup off the elm trees that grow naturally on my land? Why do I got to do any of this? When you start having to get permission from government to do anything with property that is allegedly yours, you've delved into the realm of tyranny. And that's what I've been saying. He hit the nail on the head when he said that. Looking for you're expecting every government official to solve your problems. When did it become a flex to delegate the responsibility of making decisions for your own life to a fucking prick in a suit and tie who would sooner traffic your children than see that you make a fair wage?
Well,
when did that become a flex?
Here's where you go with one of my arguments against the education system. The education system, at least 100 years ago, was completely just about taken over by leftists. And all they've done is continually raise even further leftist generations to where we are at the point now where, Jesus Christ, these people want to give puberty blockers to fucking 4-year-olds or some shit. It's just gotten that bad.
I'm not ashamed to say that if someone was trying to give my 4-year-old puberty, interrupting chemicals, I would waste I'm not afraid of prison. I will waste no time cutting off heads.
We are going to war at that point. And there have been cases in the last little while, and I realize this is kind of off the firearms topic and on to the big government topic, but there have been cases in the past little while where when parents didn't want that for their children, if some doctor, some school agent said, oh, wait a second, your kid's trans, you got to do this. And they said, no, we don't. They took the people's kids away from them.
Yep.
And then they became a ward of the state, which is mind blowing. Now, the reason I walked away, I was going to see whether I had another rear trunnion, and I don't. But I did find one of my other damn muzzle brakes.
Oh, that's awesome. I had an SKS I don't know, 4 years ago, and I had a break-in. I didn't have a proper safe. I can't afford a huge safe, so I usually just keep my my armaments in lockable military cases. Yeah, there's a seller on eBay that liquidates old military surplus stores, And I bought a field desk off of this dude years ago. I bought a fucking military surplus light kit. I bought water, like everything you can imagine I got from this guy. And a couple of years ago, he liquidated some, this was a long time ago when FTF Industries, way back when before that was a Fed trap. Anyone who's familiar, I used to do a lot of business with FTF Industries. So if y'all know who they are, y'all know they're a Fed trap now. FTF Industries is a place where you can legitimately go, and because it's not labeled a destructive device, due to the fact that the barrel it comes with is only equipped to launch smoke rounds, straight up buy an underbarrel mounted grenade launcher, at least at a time you could, and not have any worries, including the parts and equipment necessary to build smoke ammo. Now you cannot, however, and I really regret that because I had one mounted under my Yugo Type 56 that I modified to take 30-round AK mags. And this was years ago before New York started doing all their shit. And, needless to say, I still have some pretty essential parts to build an AK. And I have only to recover a barrel, some trunnions, and the internals. And I have everything I need to build an AK. I have stocks, I have mags, I have everything.
Were Arms of America even shipped to New York?
No, not the parts I'm looking for. Because if they're not straight up like Russian parts, I won't buy them. Well,
there are a lot of companies that I know will refuse to ship to New York, Rhode Island, California,
all of them,
a bunch of different states.
See, if I order parts online right now, the feds will come to my door.
Yeah, it doesn't surprise me.
Well, except for one
how
source.
Ridiculous is that? How absolutely ridiculous is that? That I'm ordering legal products, and my state constitution does not give my government the power to regulate these products, but they do it anyway, and they have enough power to where they can basically monitor these companies, and if these companies ship to a state they don't like, then they can come in and basically seize all my shit and throw me in prison.
Here's the thing.
To help you like normal.
Go ahead.
No, I was talking to my wife. She's got the freaking toughest clips on her damn holster that nobody's stealing that holster off her belt. Nobody. They're going to take her pants before they get the fucking holster.
Look at the gun.
That's awesome.
Which is not where you want to
be. I'm about to file those clips down a little bit. The inside portions of them. Don't touch them. Woman. But anyway, guys, let me get out of here, brother. Sam, do you have a channel anywhere people can find you? You just viewer, watching and chilling?
Yeah, I do have a channel right now. Most of my content is basically just gaming content.
Oh, dude, that's fucking cool. Sam of Anarchy,
building a forge.
Most of his shit, yeah. But I was going to say, Sam of Anarchy, most of his stuff is all a lot of gaming content and stuff like that. And dude, let me fix something real fast.
Well, yeah, I do have a channel here on YouTube. I also have a Rumble. I haven't done much with the Rumble yet. Yeah, I do have a channel. I do mostly gaming stuff, and I get on and talk about, like, mostly I'm MGTOW, so I do a lot of the modern dating shit. But I'm gonna be moving into more like metalworking type content because I'm building a forge at present, and I'm going to be using it to make armor. I'm learning how to make armor. I don't actually know how to make armor. I can make blades, I can make receivers, I can make things like that. So I'm a weapons specialist at core is what I would define myself as professionally per se. But where I'm at, I can't utilize any of that to make a living. So I just do it as a hobby, really. I I have a few videos where I display some of my previous builds. I have a Remington 20 gauge that I built. That was a scored out receiver that I had to heat it up. Or no. That was the Mossberg. That was the Mossberg. The Remington, I traded a Springfield 1903 30-06 sporterized rifle for it
sporterized.
To an old man. Well, it's man, I wanted to keep the 30-06, but here's the problem, okay? I couldn't at the time, I couldn't find parts, and I had the option to trade for an old 20 gauge Wingmaster, and I took it because there were so many parts online for that model at the time. I have 5 different configurations for the 20. I can have a scoped hunting configuration, a CQB kind of like home defense, shorty configuration or whatever else. So everything you need is done with the 20.
I made you a mod. Go ahead and post your stuff in the chat. That way people can find you.
Oh, cool.
And hell, that way I can find you. Go ahead and post all your stuff in the chat. And when you do that, then I'm going to bounce because either that or the wife's going to kill me. I'm married to a redhead, in case you know.
Yep. All right, man. Well, hey, man, thanks for letting me come on and say my piece. Just final thought, folks. You got to be dissonant, be disobedient. The path to freedom lies in resistance. Resist the first approaches of tyranny, as our founders would say. So thank you. I'll go ahead and post that for anyone who gives a shit, and stay dissonant.
Post it, man. And you guys give Sam a chat or give Sam a follow. And any of you guys, which is normal, a lot of you guys have channels. Let's give it about 5 minutes. You guys post your channels in the chat, and let's try to get everybody hooked up. You know how we roll, and the basic mosh pit that we got. Give everybody a minute or two, then I'm going to bounce. I still got to figure out dinner tonight. So, but yeah, post them up, man. Anybody, that's why all you guys get damn wrenches, man. If you're around for a little while, you prove that you're a cool dude, you're going to get a wrench because I've said it before. I want these chats to be like a damn mosh pit. Unless you're posting some seriously racist shit, there's no worries in this chat. But yeah, post them up, Sam. You guys follow Sam. Sam does a lot of gaming content. Sam of Anarchy, not the other Sam. The other Sam that was just on here, he apparently does gaming content too. And it's cool to watch sometimes. In the middle of doing everything else, I'll bounce onto some of Sam's videos. He's playing GTA and freaking goofing off and running cars all over the place. And it's just cool to watch, man. It's something a hell of a lot different. Jovi, you got a wrench. Post yours too. Post Trinity, as a matter of fact. That way guys can follow you guys. Mostly Fallout and Halo. Hell yeah, dude. I love me some Fallout. Now you make me, I gotta see whether it's still loaded on my box. It should still be loaded on my box. Now you make me want to play some more Fallout. But hell, in my opinion, Fallout 3 was the best one so far to come out like on an Xbox or PlayStation or something like that. Fallout 4 was good. Vegas was Vegas was okay. Vegas wasn't perfect. And I never played 76? Fallout 76? I never played 76. So when I heard the original parts about that game, I was kind of excited. And then when I heard some of the gameplay and stuff like that, it was like, no, I'm not even getting into it. And who knows, I might one day goof around with it. I can't wait for the next Fallout to come out, though. Something that's more in the vein of like Fallout 3. Because I used to be a huge, huge gamer until probably 2010, really. Well, no, say late 2009, early 2010. Because that's when I started a bunch of college stuff, and I brought my Xbox and all my games over to a buddy of mine and was like, these are now yours until I finish this up because I know I won't be able to concentrate. I'm going to be playing games. And it worked out for me, worked out for him. I got him more hooked into gaming. But and then after that, I just never really played like I used to, because I'd play for 30-something hours straight, whether it was Call of Duty, Rainbow Six Vegas, all that stuff. Used to love it. Hey, Sam, brother, I appreciate you being here, man. You guys are the crew, man. Fallout Vegas was your favorite? Oh, come on, Sam Fisher. Fallout 3 was way better than Vegas. But let's be honest, anywhere you can shoot railroad spikes at people and nail their head to walls is kind of cool.
Hey, Borderlands 2 is better than the prequel.
You are right about that. My wife got me hooked on Borderlands. I didn't play the first Borderlands very much. You got me into 2. We played Borderlands 2 like it was going out of style. And then the prequel stuff was okay. And this last Borderlands been good.
Borderlands 3 has been good.
Yeah, Borderlands 3's been pretty rocking. Yeah, Joe, railroad spikes. Yeah. The freaking cannon you can get in Fallout, yeah, where you're launching cannonballs at people. I have killed people with I can't remember what gun it is, the junk jet, where you can shoot like trash through it. Anything you can pick up, this trash, you can shoot through it. I've killed people with teddy bears. That is awful amusing. Dude, Sam, I haven't played as Sam Fisher. I haven't played as the Psycho. In 2, I was always the gunner. And then this latest one, I've been back and forth in between a couple characters. The one who gets the Iron Bear, I've played a lot as her. That's freaking cool. I love that thing. Sometimes it's fun to get away from the horse shit and just freaking play. And I got to get back more into that. Hate how they wasted Maya's character for Ava. Yes. Yeah, when it comes to Borderlands, yes. Yeah, dude. And especially when Fallout does the slow-mo stuff where you see the teddy bear coming at him in slow-mo and like wax him. Yeah, that's what made that all worth it. Because I didn't use the junk jet too much, but sometimes it was extremely freaking fun. Zero, of course. Dude, I never got into really playing Zero too much.
He's kind of difficult to play as.
He really is more difficult to play than a lot of other characters. But hell, I mean, I saw some people with Zero just freaking rip. Even Terra Morpheus just rip him to pieces in no time as a single player with Zero. And me and the wife, she got me hooked on it when we hit Terra Morpheus. God knows how many times we killed that damn thing.
I always play as a Necromancer.
I wouldn't even want to count. But yeah, my wife was always a Necromancer. That was her jam. So
fucking gauge, man. She's awesome. Number 5's live.
Anyway, but you guys, I'm going to get out of here, but you guys follow Sam Fisher. Follow Sam Anarchy, another game and content. Something different than the normal bullshit we do. BV, you got a channel, asshole, post it. And BV's got a channel that's way different. Matchboxes and stuff like that. Just real mellow, just down home stuff. So BV, post your channel, douchebag. That's why you got a wrench. I say that, my son walks in here. I'm just hoping to God he doesn't repeat that.
That's why you got a wrench.
Yeah, hopefully that's what he repeats. That's why you got a wrench.
There's a reason I said it when I said it.
Hey.
Mercedes-Benz.
Hey, speaking of matchboxes, come here. You got to show BV. What kind of cars are those?
Mercedes.
Mercedes? What's the other one?
Mercedes.
Both Mercedes?
What's your favorite?
What's your favorite car?
Mercedes. No.
Mercedes. That's a new one. Because your favorite car has been what?
Mercedes. No.
No.
It's a Rolls Royce.
It's a Rolls Royce.
What? Okay. What does Daddy drive?
What does Daddy drive?
Ford. What does
Ford.
Mama drive?
Silverado.
What is Bubba gonna drive? Ford.
Give 5.
Man,
That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. That's my boy.
He always says Ford.
He always says Ford. For the longest time, though, his favorite car was a
Rolls Royce.
It's a Rolls Royce. This kid, oh man, I'll have to do a video one time where I show off his backpack that he carries with his cars.
It's heavier than he
And
is.
chessboard, you're gonna have to freaking translate that. It looks like it's in Russian. I ain't got a chance in hell of reading it.
That's Medanya.
Oh hell yeah, BB. BB, did you actually post your channel yet? You lazy.
Wunderbar. Das ist wunderbar.
Fords have better defrosters? Yeah. Considering her other Chevy had no heat in it whatsoever.
He was old, okay?
That's the one she lawn darted into the side of a hill.
I damn sure did.
And I mean, lawn darted. All right, Chess. Speaking, Chess is here. Chess, post your channel too, please.
I was hoping Pat was going to go to the range today, but obviously not because it's raining. And I was like, what about tomorrow? We're going to check the weather. Well, it's supposed to be raining until like the afternoon. Like, it's going to be muddy as fuck. Went, take Ghost. Take my truck. It's got four-wheel drive. Take my truck.
Is it supposed to be raining in the morning tomorrow?
Yeah.
So apparently me and Dad ain't fishing till tomorrow afternoon then. Either way, I'm off all next week. So you got the Monkster this next week.
Yeah.
You're learning to speak Russian? I have zero chance of learning how to speak Russian.
I want to learn.
As much as I'd probably like to learn to speak it, I have zero chance of learning it.
We could talk so
I have
much
enough
shit about
problem learning English.
I want to learn like German and Hungarian, but I have nobody to talk to.
I used to be pretty good at German. When we were living in Heidelberg, and yeah, I could at least make it through a day speaking German, but that was a long time ago. All right. Looks like the mosh pit's about. Everybody's got their channels out. Learn to speak Mandarin. Well, yeah, Bob, with the Chinese taking everything over, Mandarin Chinese is probably a better language to learn. You got me there.
Mercedes.
Well, why didn't you post it, BB, you big goober? Yeah, I get that. Real life does get in the way of everything, doesn't it? Anyway, I'm out, guys. End it like we always do, only I'm going to hold up something different this time. I still have to send this to Dark. So anyway, you purpose be cool. Keep that dong on you at all times. And again, I still got to send that to Dark. Anyway, have a good night, guys. Hopefully we'll see you in some more chats and stuff later. Well, Chess, I keep everybody confused, brother. You already know that. But yeah, you guys take it easy. We'll see you guys later on tonight. God, there's a few people that'll go tonight. 280U always has his Friday. Of course, Bacon will be on late tonight. Hey, we'll see you guys in some more chats later. But you guys take them easy. Have a great night. Take them, take it as it is, guys. Love you guys. Y'all be cool. I am out. Later.